And with the United Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, guys. You guys ready to begin?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for attending tonight. We're going to start right in with a presentation from Ratio Architecture and Indiana Historic Landmarks. So we'll let them take it for the next 30, 45 minutes.
Introduce Julie with Ratio. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. Zoom presentations to a blind crowd is always a challenge, so bear with us because we can see no one, and it should be interesting. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. I thought it'd be great to walk through the study that Indiana Landmarks, along with people engaged in preservation, helped to fund, and others in the community. We were very fortunate and thankful to be able to get Ratio out of Indianapolis to perform the study on the school there in LaCrosse. They are well respected in the state and across the country, not only just for architecture, but specifically for their expertise in historic preservation and rehabilitating older structures with a very high reputation. So we're very thankful that they could do this and then get it done during all the other struggles that we've all been facing with COVID. So I won't take a lot of time. I'll introduce Julie with Ratio, who is really the one who's going to walk through the report tonight. Spend a few minutes going through highlights of it, kind of high level, but then allowing for time for questions, which I'm sure there are many of. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie and let you go from there.
Thanks, Todd. Hello all, I am Julie Zent with Ratio. We are a multidisciplinary firm headquartered out of Indianapolis. We have offices in Chicago, Raleigh, Champaign, and Denver. We have a dedicated staff of preservation specialists, of which I am a member. And we have people in all of these offices who do preservation work exclusively. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, so please bear with me in case there are any kind of technical difficulties. Oop. Brian, it says I'm disabled from doing so. Is there any way for me to share, or?
Okay, try now.
Okay. Hold on just a second, everybody. Let's see. All right. And I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible, so please let me know if I'm making you seasick or if going too fast. Just yell out. I cannot see you at all right now because of how I have to do this. But Ratio was engaged in 2020 to complete a condition assessment on the 1915 Mission Spanish Revival LaCrosse High School. While we are only employed to look at the school building, we did include some site and gymnasium connection recommendations. Please note, a Phase 1 environmental site assessment was not included as part of this study. This looks at any hazardous materials. So the LaCrosse High School is listed as outstanding in the LaPorte County Interim Report. An interim report is a survey that is conducted by the State Historic Preservation Office, in which they survey every county in Indiana to determine historic sites and structures. Why this is important? Because that outstanding listing means that that high school is most likely eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. Why is that important? Well, with that listing, you can be eligible for a variety of grants and funding resources. So our study reviewed all the components of the building and provided prioritized recommendations along with a cost estimate by Ton and Blank, which are headquartered out of Michigan City. I hope you all had a chance to review the report, and I'm just going to quickly summarize our findings on it. So, hopefully, can you all see my screen? You cannot. Hold on just a moment, please. Screen 2. Oh, sorry, I neglected to click one button. Oh. All right, now can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for your patience. It's 2020, we all need it. This is the cover of our report, and we have shown historic photos from circa 1950 next to current photos of 2020, and it's amazing how little this building has changed. And below here is another historic photo. So when looking at the exterior, for a building of this vintage, the building shell and the structure are in good condition. As you know, the roof and the windows have been replaced over the years, but the masonry and the wood components, the cornice, the bay window, the cupola, well, in need of maintenance, are still in good condition. Here's just another couple of views of the building. Not that you don't know it. So the masonry, yes, there are some places that there has been some bad repointing. There are a few cracks and settlement, but in general, it's in good condition. Same with the roof. As far as the exterior goes, the major problem that we saw, oops, there's my cat, was the drainage. The gutters all appear to be in good shape. The downspouts all appear in good shape, but I don't think you can deny that there's some intricate maneuvers going on with the downspouts. And on the interior, this has led to some plaster deterioration. So our recommendation in regard to drainage is to install a perimeter drain around the building that would gather all the water and take it away from the building. In this process, it would end up having you to reconfigure some of your planting beds, which in our observation may not be draining away from the building necessarily, and that would give you the opportunity to ensure that the planting beds for any surface water are continuing to keep that water away. As we move into the interior, just some views of the exterior, we go into the systems. Now, you'll surely acknowledge not all of these systems were in place as they were in 1915. The mechanical system, well, it's in need of an upgrade. We have window air conditioners. It's not a consolidated system, and replacement probably would be a benefit to the building. The electrical system has been upgraded on an as-needed basis. There are so many different components to this. It's hard to understand what is actually working and what is not. And it appears to be at capacity. So if you want to introduce anything more to the building, you are limited by what that system will hold. Plumbing systems have a new water heater and piping, but if you're going to upgrade any of the restrooms for accessibility, new fixtures will be required. The life safety issue, you do have life safety features such as a fire alarm system and smoke detectors, but we recommend supplementing those to provide additional coverage. Excuse me for just a moment. Let's see here. Okay, so here we have some of your systems. As you know, there is not a fire suppression or sprinkler system in the building at present. Also, security and technology. Those are always in need of upgrade and weren't original to the building. Let's go and take a look at our plans and discuss some of the other issues. So, typical for a building of this vintage, the first level is a half level above grade, the basement a half level below grade, which is great for allowing natural light and air into the basement, but not so great for accessibility. Also, for schools, if you were to build one today, code would necessitate that you have two means of egress. Currently, those means of egress are provided by two fire escapes on the east elevation. When looking at this, we thought the east elevation just afforded a lot of opportunities to provide not only accessibility, security, but also egress. And what we looked at was providing a vertical circulation addition. This would be located at grade, you'd enter at grade from the east, and then you could have an elevator for accessibility, or stairs down to the lower or up to the upper levels. What we're envisioning this as is a brick addition that is symmetrically placed on the east elevation, respecting the building's aesthetics, but simplified so that it doesn't confuse the timeline. Where we also saw an opportunity for security was to add what we were envisioning as a glass structure on the building that you could have as your main entry. Being a different material would definitely draw the eye and speak to entry. At this point, you could have your reception and security all located, and this also gives you an opportunity to connect to the existing gymnasium. As we go up to the first floor, once again, we'd be looking at modifying doors on that location to let you in. We'd have to relocate the principal, but we would have an opportunity once again to have our vertical circulation tower connect to the gymnasium and get to those classrooms. It may require a little bit of an addition on the gymnasium to add doors there. And then the second floor, there we go, just has our vertical circulation tower. We also recommend, if you're going to go through with this, to upgrade the restrooms to be ADA compliant. And then, let's see here. As I said, the east just seemed to lend itself to this new entry sequence, where you could remove a playground area that I don't imagine high school students use very often, and replace with a new drop-off lane for buses or cars. Provide handicap parking and guest parking, and just create a new entry sequence that would allow for accessibility for all, so that anybody who was disabled would not feel like a second-class citizen coming into the rear entry. This would also allow for opportunities to connect to the gymnasium and provide a secure courtyard area, which maybe for students who are getting good grades or faculty could be, say, an outdoor lunch area. Let's go on. All right, with this, we prioritized our recommendations based on what we thought needed to happen immediately, which is mostly accessibility and systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, security, technology. And in our medium level, we have upgrading of exterior lighting, structural repairs to the bay window, and the option to install a fire suppression system. And then as low priorities is the actual building, which would include masonry repairs, wood package, windows, handrails, and interior finishes. So as I said, the building shell and structure are in good condition, and our higher priority items are items that weren't necessarily integral to the building to begin with. So with that, I will open it up to any kind of questions. Oops, let me stop sharing my screen if I can. Pardon me while I figure this one out. I apologize, I can't figure out how to stop sharing.
Julie?
Yes.
Kelly Shepard. First question I have is, how many times did you physically tour the facility in production of your report?
That is an interesting topic. Actually, Mark Stoner from our Chicago office toured the facility, and he did so once. Mark left the firm in May. However, before he did so, we walked through all of his findings so that this report could be produced.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, if I may. How often does your company look at a building of this age to be remodeled for use as a school?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
I'm going to repeat the question. How often does your company remodel a building of this age in use as a school?
That's an interesting question as well. A lot of times, we don't remodel it as a school. We have converted many of old schools into apartments because they seem to lend themselves to that use. My most recent school was actually Riverside High School in Indianapolis, which was the former Hessler Naval Armory. So I took a naval armory and turned it into a high school versus doing a high school into a high school. But we also converted Heron High School from some buildings of this vintage in Indianapolis. They were not traditionally used as high school at that time either. So it seems like this is one of the rare cases where you can do a rehab on a high school that was in continuous use as a high school. I am working in Cambridge City, Indiana, on converting an elementary school into a daycare facility. So that would probably be the closest one, and it's of a similar vintage to this building. Sorry for the long-winded response.
Yes, hi. Was wondering what is a environmental study basically mandatory or very common for something like this, and any idea what the cost would be?
An environment assessment, a site assessment, would identify any hazardous materials. Now, looking through the building, we can, from our experience, eyeball things that we would suspect have hazardous materials. For example, pipe wrap often has asbestos in it. The 9x9 vinyl tiles a lot of times would have asbestos in the mastic, which is the glue that holds the tiles down. And you do have some of those in the high school. So we would suspect those. But please note, the tiles all appear to be secured, and it's only an issue if it becomes what they call friable. Friable is when it starts to deteriorate and you get little particles that get in the air and that you can inhale. Obviously with this building, lead paint would be something of consideration as well.
So does an environmental study include like outside soil samples and stuff like that, or not necessarily for an application like this?
You can dictate what you are looking at. So yes, we could include soil samples in this environmental site assessment.
Can I add a little bit to that? So, a lot of times those environmental studies are really required when you've got a change of use of the site, say an industrial site to a residential or something else. This has been a school, as Julie mentioned, since its construction, and so really the school corporation should have some sense of where any tanks would be or that sort of thing. So it's a limited study in the sense of environmental risks, and talk about soil studies, that sort of thing. Really, it's a matter of just nailing down some more details around these earlier things that Julie mentioned about pipe wrap and things that would need to be dealt with anyways in the renovation. So I don't want to get too far off on the soil samples and that sort of thing. This has been a school site under the control of the corporation since its construction, so a nominal concern there, really, in our opinion.
Right, and if you go back, we reviewed these maps that are called Sanborn maps, and it really illustrated that nothing had changed on this site since this building's inception, and actually previous to this 1915 structure was a school building before that.
Okay, any kind of estimate what the environmental study would make ballpark range for what type of study you're talking about?
Depending on the amount of samples that they take, it's usually you can expect about like $2,500.
Okay.
We would be glad to help with some of that cost as well. We've already offered on the environmental side. I have contractor who's willing to come in and take a look on the asbestos side, put those numbers together. It's really not a big concern in this building. There is some, but it's not as extensive as other buildings we've been involved with in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Melanie Mills. I'm just wondering on the priority list, you don't have the install the fire suppression system in the high priority. Why isn't that?
Did you say we did not have the fire suppression system?
It's
Not
an
in-
option 2, it's not an option
It's
1.
not in option 1.
Right. With a building that has been used as a school since its inception, per code, it's allowed to continue its use. If you make any overwhelming changes to it, then it has to meet current code. However, as long as it's continued in its use and used as it was designed for and met the code of the time, you do not have to update it. It is what they call grandfather. If we build an addition for vertical circulation, that will likely need to have a fire suppression system. However, the introduction of that into the school overall, while recommended, is not necessary at this point in time. That way it gives you some flexibility in funding. And we do have it as a medium priority item for that reason. As I said, you know, of course you want to make sure everybody, life safety wise, is protected. But because the building is grandfathered, it is not a necessity at this point.
Now, from the research I've done, if you start upgrading, you have to upgrade everything. You can't be grandfathered anymore.
That has not been our experience. As I said, it's been a school since its inception. It was built in accordance to the code of its time. It's a school right now, and nobody's coming to say, hey, you need to have a fire suppression system in here or else we're going to close you down. But as I said, if any alterations made to the building, those alterations must meet code. So a addition to the building must meet code, but the building itself, they're not going to impose that on you, where you are, especially when you're improving life safety.
I'll just add to that, these are obviously, it's important to make the building safe, and we're encouraging that. And you certainly could choose to do the fire suppression system first, and that would be fine. There's no mandatory rule you have to follow this low, medium, high priority. This was just a way to lay out some ways you could phase a project, and you could move things around as the corporation saw fit in the priority items. And certainly, if fire suppression is the top thing you feel is needed, that could be looked at. So it's important to make it safe. We want to make this building safe. We want to make it modern for modern education purposes. The way the budget was laid out was just a way to say, if you need to prioritize some things first, second, third, here's a first take at that. Certainly in conversation with the board and the superintendent and the parents and folks in the community, if an item is felt to be a higher priority, put it in the higher priority item list. That's totally fine. This is a first stab at that. So certainly code compliance is important, fire suppression and safety is important. It can be done in this building. That's what this is showing. Whether you do it first, second, third, or as part of an overall package, that would be the next conversation. I would just throw that out there for some consideration.
So that will obviously add that money too.
And what we tried to do was present you with almost an a la carte menu so that you could look at different aspects. And as Todd said, maybe a fire suppression system in the school board is priority 1. you can take that one and put it up to the high priority items. Funding is available.
I have a question. If you take all these options,
If I could just interrupt real quick, if someone could repeat the questions for us that are nearer the computer or wherever the microphone is, it'd be really helpful. We can kind of really barely hear the questions, so it'd be helpful if somebody could just repeat them for us. That'd be great. Thank you.
I have a question about the total of all the options, $4.8 million. How sure are you that that is the exact number that the school corporation is going to incur on this project? Because like we said, we know there's asbestos in the building. That will have to be remediated. That is not figured in that price. Lead paint remediation is not in that price.
Were you guys able to hear that one?
Yeah, I believe we did. I wish we had our contractor on board to answer this question, but Tundra Blank is familiar with historic buildings, and they take in consideration all of these things that are commonly found, such as lead paint, asbestos pipe wrap. And so I think those numbers are, you know, they would have considered that that's a factor.
But on this estimate, there's nothing on there that addresses those items.
But these were more general numbers to get you an idea where to go to. They didn't delineate every specific item, but they are giving you what their experience has shown it takes to do this work. And we specifically went to a contractor up in your area so that they would have relevant numbers in regard to construction in your area.
I would say that these are as specific as the estimates were provided for the other build alternative. The remediation costs are embedded in the estimates for the cost of that particular part of the project. So mechanical, electrical, et cetera, those things are anticipating that remediation. The numbers I was seeing for the other aspects of these projects are as general as what's been presented in this report. So I think that's a fair apples to apples comparison, where we're being as specific as the others are as well. And have gone really the extra step of actually bringing in the contractor who could actually do the work. So this isn't just Julie and some of her cohorts sitting around throwing darts at the board. You know, this is saying, here's what we need to do to the building from the architect's standpoint. Tundra Blank, you're the contractor, can do a project of this scale, has experience, been around a long time. What do you think this is going to run? And they put those numbers together. So I think between the two, you have a really good assessment of what a project would cost, a fair assessment of that, to bring this building into use for many, many decades.
So this $4.8 million is a firm number. We could count on that being an exact figure. If we said, yeah, we want to do it, we're only going to pay $4.8 million. We can hold Tundra Blank to that number.
Yeah, to the extent you could hold the people that provided the estimate, they also are looking at for the other school builds. I guess if they're willing to sign that sort of document, I'd be kind of surprised. I think this is a fair number to look at. I think that question is a little bit, I don't know what you can say about that. This is a good estimate. It's well prepared, and it's equal to what you were looking at from your other firms as well.
If I could stay on that track for a second, both Todd or Julie. I read this phrase, I count 5 times. If I'm wrong, it might be 6. But something to the effect, further investigation will be required to adequately supplement these systems or to adequately design these systems. And in addition to those lines, there's several references to consultation with a structural engineer would be required. Now, I read that and think that, in my mind, that feels like additional cost. Can you speak to that?
A structural engineer was not engaged as part of this study. We recognize that in regard to the bay window, there is some issues there. Now, in regard to contractors, I am married to one. I happen to know that when they see that kind of language, they overcompensate, assuming the worst. But we would need an actual structural engineer on the project to design and implement whatever kind of repairs are needed for that bay window.
So we're talking about bay windows and a fire suppression system is an option.
The question is, so we're talking about the bay window and the fire suppression system as an option.
I mean, the bay window is a must and the fire suppression system is an option.
Is the bay window in the high priority versus fire suppression in the medium priority?
The bay window is also in the medium priority. While you can definitely see some kind of slope occurring at that location, it does not appear that it's about to collapse immediately. As I said, if you engage a design team on this, a structural engineer will be part of that team. It's just a necessity. And they will have the opportunity to evaluate that and design any additional repairs to that as required.
Julie, I have a question also. On the restrooms, it said that they may not be able to be updated to code.
They may not be able to,
Updated.
Is that what I heard? I'd have to look at the exact language. Right now, the basement restroom,
Hey, Julie, let me help you out there. Page 45, 5.6, restrooms. They're listed as a high priority. But I think what Melanie is looking at is within the first two sentences there under high priority. A more thorough investigation into existing dimensions and plumbing walls would be required. I think that was my 6th time that I found the more thorough investigation being required. Due to the existing wall configuration.
we did not take exact measurements of every room in the building. If you walk into the first floor and second floor restrooms as they are now configured, obviously they do not meet any kind of accessibility requirements. From what we see, we believe that they can be made accessible, but there are going to be modifications that need to be made. We're going to need to look at plumbing counts versus student population and make sure that we can accommodate all of those at the same time. We are confident that it can be done. It's just that we did not dimension every aspect of the building and, look at, hey, is this water closet 18 inches away from this wall? What is this step up to the urinals? We did not go into that minutia at this point in time. That's something that comes with construction documents, but we do feel like those restrooms can be converted with additional investigation.
But the number that's included in the budget, it anticipates that taking place, and the number that's in the budget is put there so those restrooms could be upgraded. So I'm not sure it's necessarily a leap from when it says additional investigation that there's necessarily additional cost. These numbers were put together anticipating needing to upgrade these restrooms to accommodate the code and making them accessible. So I guess I would just put that out there as a counterpoint to that that thought.
Sure. But just to finish, because it's the second half of that sentence that gets also important. which is, I was stating, due to existing wall configuration, this states, it may not be possible to obtain code compliant clearances.
Thank you.
Am I reading that incorrectly?
You have to also look at the language that says, and you would, maybe that one isn't, but there are other locations in the building that there will be full accessible restrooms created, so it's not like everyone. So I don't think it precludes renovation. It does talk about making other restrooms available in the building as well.
Okay.
Right, and it's not necessary to have every single restroom fully ADA compliant. It's just desirable. As I said, if you have ADA accommodations, then you meet the code. However, best practice states that you'd want to try to do it everywhere you can.
Typically, when you're doing a project, is there a deviation that's normal based upon the price? So again, this is an estimate. You're making a recommendation at this point, and also saying to your best of your knowledge in many cases, or further investigation required. Is there a typical project when you're at this point in a project, or recommendations that is normal when you look at an increase? Is it 3% or 30%, or somewhere in between? If you look at since you've been in this business for so long, any kind of point you can refer to?
Well, it is 2020. Things have been kind of thrown out the window. As I mentioned, my husband is a contractor, and it's been very strange to see what numbers have been on the rise and what numbers have been stable. Right now, he's seeing incredible rises in lumber and masonry. We can't predict why, but they're in high demand right now. This is our best estimate for 2020 prices. We are giving you a number to work toward. It might be a recommendation that if you go down this avenue, that we get a contractor involved from the start. That way you can they have the security of getting the project, and then they also can give you real-time numbers that change as the environment around us changes.
And I would add that comparison is equal whether you're rehabbing the building in LaCrosse or adding on to the one otherwise. Masonry is going to be what it is no matter what. So I think that's an apples to apples offset, that if there's an increase in materials in one place, it's also going to be on the other building as project as well. So I don't want that to be taken as just related to LaCrosse School itself, because that's across the board. And as those of you who are involved know, it is a weird time at building. So I think that's just a caution in general about a project in 2020.
Right.
Specifically, LaCrosse School is going to be more expensive. It's going to be what it is in both locations.
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, that is correct, because my husband does actually do new construction, and he is finding the numbers are just strange, but unfortunately, all his mechanical, electrical, plumbing prices seem to be steadier at this point in time, which is where we know you need a lot of upgrades.
And Julie, what did you say again? How many schools have they remodeled? One?
Well, I can tell you from our experience, schools do get remodeled, and this is not an unusual project in the sense that you have a building that's highly able to be renovated to modern standards. And so I would just put that out there, that it's a construction question. It's a cost per square foot, and what needs to be put in is essentially new construction, new mechanical, electrical, plumbing, that sort of thing, and that's what's priced in. So I would just put that out there, that this is a good building that can be renovated for quality education purposes for many decades to come at a fair number. So I didn't want to step on you, Julie, but I just want to throw that out there. And there are schools that are renovated.
Yes, that is correct, Todd. And this, the building shell is just such a good structure that, I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's just the systems within that are more in need of upgrade, and just to try to get to contemporary school standards in regard to technology.
Did you guys have to check the foundation? This water's coming in, all the brick, you say the exterior looks nice. But you just look at the basement or the foundation underneath the ground. Did you take any core samples? Because mortar does deteriorate, brick does deteriorate with water. And that water has to come in to damage the drywall or plaster that's down there. And if it's coming in time after time after time, you know the mortar, which I'm a bricklayer at one time, deteriorates. Did you guys check that? Because the maintenance and to rebuild that is a lot more than building something new.
Yeah, so Julie processes that a little bit, and we can't see who's speaking, so just try and address that. Absolutely, water needs to be addressed, and one of the first things that Julie talked about was the need to deal with the water that's coming in that lower level. It's a water where the water's coming down in that downspout, so it's dumping it where it's coming into that lower level classroom that needs to be addressed. And she started out talking about specifically addressing that planting bed that is beginning to that's causing that trouble. Once you open it up, then certainly you can tuck point that space, get it waterproofed, and direct the water that's coming in from that gutter that's dumping it where it doesn't need to be dumped. And there is pricing in the report to deal with masonry repair, including the repairs that need to be dealt with that are being caused by the water. When you deal though first with the planting bed that's causing some of this issue. So I just wanted to respond to that briefly, that is addressed, and the pricing is in there for masonry repairs as well. So Julie, I'll turn it over to you for additional comment.
Well,
Right, yes,
you know,
we did
the
recognize
drain
that
isn't just in one
water is
place.
entering the building, and that the drainage needs to be redirected away from the building. Now, what we were looking at is a foundation drain. It appears at one point in time there was such a structure, as we saw inlets around the building, but that would entail digging out around the base of the building. We'll evaluate whether we put bentonite waterproofing on the exterior and then install a new perimeter drainage pipe that will direct all the water away from it. Part of that, as Todd said, will be those repairs to that exterior wall to ensure that we're not allowing water to infiltrate the building anymore. And, you know, during this process, as Todd mentioned, the planting beds will be disrupted, but that will give you the opportunity to ensure that they drain away from the building. So it'll be kind of, it's many different aspects, but it'll all be addressed in one project.
Yes, but the drainage, like you just said, you're talking about one side of a building. Now, this is happening on all sides of this building, north, south, east, and west. Now, when
So
you
then
said
we
the outside
addressed the
is,
drainage on the north, south, east, and west as part of the project, and that was anticipated.
Right.
As part of this. You don't just leave one part of the building unaddressed. You gotta deal with the drainage around it, absolutely. I agree.
yeah, but just the patching on the outside, with all this, you have to have a core sample to find out how much that interior mortar, I don't care if it's 3 block thick or 3 brick or what it is, how it has deteriorated. Because you know that foundation is holding that school. And if that water is coming in for so many years and has been doing this and keeps on doing this, it's not just going to be a simple fixing the outside and tuck pointing. It's going to be an inside job too. It doesn't sound, you make it sound simple, and when they tear into it, it's not going to be.
What we were discussing was complete perimeter foundation, which will mean excavating around the perimeter, repairing the walls as required, and putting in this drainage to redirect the water. I mean, we would not be neglecting that masonry when this project occurs. It will address that foundation and make sure that the building is secure and structurally sound.
And there is no evidence in the exterior of that building of anything shifting. The building of brick like this would exhibit signs of that. If it was as extensive as what you're suggesting, I think that it would be quite obvious, but certainly would address the needs to repair and take the samples necessary to figure that out.
I have a question.
Got it, yeah.
How bad would it be for a building like this to be torn down and how it's being talked that it's a historical building? But if they decide to build to the Wanata School instead, how bad, of losing a school of this historic nature would impact the field that you are in?
Yeah, I think anytime you take the energy out of the middle of a community, it's not a positive thing. That's a personal experience. We're talking about the cost of, the renovation this evening. There are other ancillary effects to any decision, and I think that those will have to be discussed by the community. We're certainly advocates for keeping a walkable school or a school in the middle of a community. It provides energy, it provides identity, and other positives for the community that, of course, on the inverse, once they're gone, it just creates kind of a hole. And I think you can drive through town after town, unfortunately, in Indiana and see when the school is moved, is not a positive impact. I will just leave it at that. So I think that's something you all should talk about and consider seriously about that impact. Clearly, the board has to make a decision based on how they're going to build or where they're going to build. And I respect that. There are community issues and impacts based on that decision too that I'm sure they're aware of.
As a board member, we love this building, we do. But my main priority, I really, when I read through this report with the fire, my main priority sitting up here is to keep every child safe.
Yep.
And I can't agree to anything unless, we have better documentation here of high priority, medium priority, low priority. Because there's some things on here that I would consider keeping a child safe would be at the top, but they're in the medium.
Then I would encourage you to put them up there. As we mentioned, this isn't, we don't, that would be up to you as the board. I agree. It needs to be a safe building, it needs to be a modern building for education use. You need to keep your students safe, absolutely. So it could be a high priority item. I agree.
Kelly, I have a question.
Yeah.
Working in the building, I'm wondering, when you do this project, are we staying in the building the entire time? Are we able to continue educating our students while you're doing all of these repairs and upgrades?
So let me make sure I captured the question correctly. The question is, how do you sequence a project like this to keep the students safe during construction and to keep the teachers safe during construction? Did I get that correct?
Yeah, I'm office staff.
Yes, that's the question.
So, yeah, let me walk through that, and then I'll let Julie also weigh in as she thinks through the sequencing. Absolutely. There are breaks during which remediation can be done, so there are no students or staff in the building during that remediation. The noisy things can be done when students aren't there over breaks. There are ways that you could sequence this project based on floors so that it wouldn't even be in the middle of it. So there are ways to do that. And then Julie had a couple of interesting ideas. Safety is paramount, both for the staff and the students, especially during construction. We would never want to do this in a way that would endanger anyone. But given your enrollment load and the size of that building, there's space to sequence this construction and undertake stuff that needs to be done, mechanical, electrical, over the summer when the kids aren't even in. All that truly built on that.
Before you do, I want to clarify what I heard there. So you're saying with our enrollment, we could easily move on to one floor while another one's
No, you can stay on the one floor. I said there's extra space depending on how you do the renovation. Maybe you could do a floor and then relocate some folks. I want to get into the minutia of which square foot. I do think we have to sequence this so that people are safe and not put in danger during construction.
Thank you.
Julie?
Right, I think looking at this, obviously, schools have summer recess in which you could have the most disruption to the site where you're working on, if you're looking at this vertical circulation tower in earnest, that you could work on that and getting the foundations for that built. A lot of the work is going to take place on the exterior, and there are ways to make sure that you have safe means of egress into the school for the students at all times. And as Todd was suggesting, that this could be phased out in such a way that you are doing any kind of interior work one floor at a time, so therefore you can relocate or have the students use 2 different levels and then shift, but that could always have secure means of egress to those. And if there was any kind of disruptive element that had occurred, they had to shut off the power or they had to shut off the water in order to get the new electrical or plumbing systems engaged. I don't know about your school system, but my daughter's been virtual since March 12th. She has not actually been physically in a school building. And I think, you know, if 2020 has given us anything, it's given us that flexibility that if they need to shut down the water, perhaps you have a e-learning day on those times.
So based upon that, then how long do you see a project like this actually taking place over a period of time?
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Time of construction, it's going to be based on what you put into which phase. You know, I think that Rachel can give us ideas on how long it would take to do the exterior, new egress, and kind of, it's going to depend a lot on what you put in which phase. And I've heard good comments that perhaps you want to phase different things. So what's the kind of the range of construction time frames, Julie, is what I heard the question be.
When we converted Hessler Armory to Riverside High School, that was, let's see, much more extensive, and I think maybe we had about a year time frame, and we had a very dedicated deadline to get students in prior to the school year starting. So we had to be done before summer recess ended. Now this is my gut feeling from experience. I'm not going to say this, you can take this as a definite number, but this would seem to be about a 9-month construction period to me. If, you know, we can start in the summer, or if we can end in the summer, I think that summer recess really gives you time to move forward with the project. And they can get a lot done in a couple months.
Were there actually children in that school as you were moving it? I guess I look at 9 months into disruption in an environment which a learning.
There were not students in that facility when we were doing the renovation, no.
Some of that 9 months is the construction on the exterior, which doesn't impact necessarily the interior. So yeah, certainly there are disruptions. We don't want to, you know, try and undermine or minimize that. Certainly there is. It can be managed. I agree. It's a 9 to 11 month project, but some of that's summertime, some of it's spring break or Christmas break. You don't even know how that's all going to work right now with COVID. But in the future, when we have regular schedules, you know, you've got some break times in that 9 months too. So that all goes into the mix.
Well, we already have a lot of electrical issues and some challenges like that with networks and things. And you look at, again, the safety of our children and being 3 floors, which is, I don't know many 3-floor high schools that are around in my area, but if that's, of course, the concern today, which is being assessed by the board. And one of the comments you made as far as we're electrical, that some of the components of the electrical are very dangerous, potentially dangerous. So in associate the risk associated with the timing of those type of projects when you're looking at a project through this many months, when you're making those kind of adaptations and making sure the kids are safe?
I think the electrical system would be, if you're looking at adding an elevator or supplementing technology and security, you're going to need to upgrade that electrical system. And that will be one of the first items that occurs is you get a new service pulled into the building that can upgrade it. You know, this is one of those things where, yes, we got a precursory look, you know, one-day evaluation of this, but you really need an electrical engineer to go in there and assess all the different systems and understand which components are working and which are not. But that would be, it's in priority one. That's something, you know, that would happen immediately, especially if you want to be upgrading additional services such as technology, security, adding an elevator. Electrical is going to be first, and if that can happen during a summer, then you'll be prepared for the semesters following.
You might not have this answer, but on the financial side, of course, I'm not familiar with it, but I know there's bond issues and things like that are required. Does that look different when you were trying to achieve issuing bonds against a project, when there's an older building versus a newer building, and when you're looking at selling those bonds or a rate associated with it?
No.
Now I know, we're into this over an hour with you. I know I'd asked you both for 45 minutes. We won't hang on too much longer with you guys if your time is up. But you had both, first of all, I want to go back to a few statements back. You both stated it is a good building. I will agree with you. I will actually say it is a great building. However, on that same tack, you talked about it being modernized. The building can be modernized. But Mr. Goose kind of mentioned that you can't change the footprint of it. You can't take away the fact that it is 3 or 4 stories. My biggest concern when we talk about safety is actually the existing vertical stairs. And that is, so I see that as a low priority, and I know we've already established we can make those decisions on which priority to put those in, and we can elevate that if we choose to. But so that actual modernization comes with a lot of cost that isn't there. And that, for me, is my biggest concern when we talk about safety. Yeah, there's a lot of other safety concerns that are newsworthy, but that set of stairs has really caused the most issues for us over the years with the trip hazard, the fall. We've had students, we've had staff. What led you to put that in the low priority? Was it cost?
What kind of issues have you had with the existing stairs? I mean, you said trip or fall issues. Is it a handrail issue, or is it a visibility issue where we need to maybe put some different floor materials on there so that the stairs are clarified?
It's 2 things. It's I believe the handrails are the correct height. Is that what I read in there, I believe. But also, the tread depths are all varying distances. There's as much as an inch difference on various stair heights, up and down all 3 flights. So that is just a major concern for me.
The stairs themselves are not different heights, but when you get to the top or the bottom, because of additional flooring that's been added, it's changed them, is that correct?
No, the stairs themselves are different heights. When you measure the tread height from one step to the next, some of them are an inch different, some are a ½ inch, some are a 1/4 inch.
in different sequences of stairs or stairs within one run?
Stairs within one run.
We would have to look at that a little more closely, but our proposal is to create a new vertical circulation stair that would become the main stair, which would meet all code requirements, including equal risers for those stairs and compliant handrails, etc. And that, in our vision, would become the main circulation for student, faculty, and staff. The historic stairs, yes, would like to upgrade safety on there with appropriate handrails, and I think we need to look closer at the rise and run. If there is this large discrepancy between, individual stair treads.
That sounds so odd. That's why we're asking the question. That would be unusual for a carpenter who have built a run of stairs that were off. I'm not questioning that you've measured them and can stipulate that, but I think adjusting those so they're the same would certainly be part of that. And then you mentioned the handrails, so that's a question we can't really address specifically this evening. We'll have to leave that one on the table, unfortunately, right now.
Okay, thank you.
It would need to be dealt with, certainly, but a specific solution for it outside of the scope this evening, I think.
Okay, thanks. Julie, early on, this question got past me and we were moving too quickly. But I was curious about the small paragraph at the beginning of page 9. That's kind of a historical little snapshot. I had two questions. I was curious kind of where that research comes from, if you could direct me there. And if you could speak to where it states LaCrosse's period of significance is listed between the years 1910 to 1940, a time frame that LaCrosse High School falls within. Just what does that mean?
I'll address that while you're getting to the right spot, Julie.
Thank you.
So that's a phrase that shouldn't be taken other than just with regard to how a building is evaluated for its historic status. It means nothing other than that. It's a phrase that's used when buildings are looked at for eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places. That sounds very jargony. I don't mean it to be.
Okay.
But buildings need to be 50 years old or older generally. And so the National Register establishes a time frame, and that's called the period of significance. And in this case, it's picking up from when the building was built, give or take, and it's moving forward to its last construction period, which is basically the gym, give or take. And that's its, quote, period of significance. That's the date of the building's construction, essentially, and changes and adaptations. So it means that's all that's relating to is just kind of the construction time frame of the building and what would be considered its historic status. Does that explain that well enough?
Yes, that's perfect. I wasn't able to ascertain exactly what it's referencing, so that's the definition.
It's a jargony phrase, and I admit that. That's just how the National Register talks, and it just means the building's historic period, what's considered significant of it from when it was constructed through the date of the gym. Let me give you one last example on that. If it had an addition in 1992, the significant period would still be 1915 to 1949. It wouldn't necessarily go all the way up because that addition in 92 wouldn't mean anything. So it's just a period of time, and that's what's the important period of the building. Julie, do you want to add to what the other part of the question?
I got lost in the other part of the question listening to you because I was thinking about how sometimes we get lost in our own specific lingo in the preservation world. What was the second part?
Capacity.
Capacity. Hold on just a moment. What did I say about capacity?
No, I was just curious about where the little historical research piece came from. That was all. And believe me, we're in education, so we know all about jargon.
We weren't going to say that, but yeah. Just kidding.
No, you answered my question.
Okay, good. Yeah, I did put a couple footnotes down there. Hopefully I did them correctly. I mean, as a school, you're probably correcting all my grammar and my noting capacity.
You had noted earlier in the conversation about grant funding. What is your
Correct.
experience?
Let me hold on just a moment while I pull up something. I did list, just a bunch of grants that I thought could be applicable. I just need to figure out what page I put them on in my notes. Well, I'm just going to wing it for right now, but when I talked about being registered for on the National Register of Historic Places, that would allow you to get historic preservation rehabilitation tax credits. That provides 20% of your qualified rehabilitation expenses. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk on that right now because that would not pertain to any site improvements or additions, but anything you do to the building shell, the interior would all be qualified expenses. There are also, on the school we did in Indianapolis, we looked into energy efficiency programs through the state of Indiana, and I'm not sure who your providers are up there, but for upgrading our electrical systems and our mechanical systems, we had to provide an audit of what their efficiency was beforehand, and then I think we got over $100,000 in grants for upgrading those systems to more efficient systems. With, let's see, through the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, there are also different programs, community development block program funds or historic renovation grant program. Those are some things you can look into.
And she left the second part to that.
Todd, help me out here, what I'm missing, I'm kind of going off the cuff.
If it's registered on the National Register, that's kind of the first piece for that. There's also a grant through the State Historic Preservation Office that I'm fairly confident in. It's up to $50,000, and I know this is a big project. Maybe these aren't a large amounts, but they're little bits. $50,000 that could go towards exterior construction, rehabilitation of the existing building. That's a likely one. The tax credits could be available. It does take a fairly sophisticated ownership and leaseback structure, but it could be done, and it could provide a fairly significant investment as far as equity into that project for that. So it's something to think about. So when you hear tax credits, don't dismiss that because we know you're a school, but it can be structured to allow for those types of incentives to flow in. So the Historic Preservation Fund through the State Historic Preservation Office is a likely one. We do some consultation with some other smaller grant funds that could help with some seed funds. But really at the core of this though, you are making a decision and it is a project, it will cost some money locally, and that's really where it's at. There are some grant funds out there. It's not going to pay for a majority of the project, so I don't want anybody leaving tonight thinking, that that's a path you should be pursuing, but there are some dollars, here and there to pursue.
And give a general time frame on how long it takes to pursue those.
It's going to depend on what you apply for. The Historic Preservation Fund is every fall, it comes and it's awarded all in spring. I could get you some time frames to set up the necessary structure if you wanted to do it as a tax credit project. Those are more complicated. It would take a few months to put that together. So it's going to depend on the source. I can't just give you dates off the top of my head.
Understood.
With the current state that you assessed when you were at LaCrosse, if nothing was done in the current state, how long, what do you think the state would be like? How much longer do you think without doing anything other than basic maintenance? The condition of the school would be in over a period of time, if it 2, 3 3, 4, 5, 10 years, if you look further degradation, what does that look like? When we're assessing the timeline and that emotional part of all this, of course, it would have to go to a vote, we have to get votes, we have to go through the process. So looking at the whole process timeline, if it were elongated, what does that look like for the safety of children? Some of the things that, quite frankly, were concerning with electrical and the things that you said were very hazardous that exist today, taking 2 years to get some of these things fixed would be a concern. So I'm just kind of wondering if you have an assessment on that.
I'm not sure where the 2-year came from. I guess you have to take into consideration your vote for the bonds, that sort of thing. Is that what you're lumping in there?
Yeah, so I think roughly you'd have to get something on the ballot, so that roughly.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, I mean, as we've said, the building does need some attention. It's time. Not sure the level of investment over the past few years, so certainly it's time. I think it's, a decision needs to be made, certainly, and it's time to move forward with the project. You seem to be, when I went to the open house, there was some conversation about the timing for the bonds. I don't recall what that time frame looked like. It seemed like it was a few months, but it didn't seem like it was a year.
Wouldn't this have to be voted on by the public and the town, the corporation, townships?
It's going to depend on the amount of the bond, and I don't want to get much over my skis and all that with the board there tonight, but they could better answer that question as far as timelines on the bonds.
My understanding is based upon the volume or dollar amounts, even with only doing phase high priority items, not including other things we spoke of, it would have to go to a vote. Or petition for a plea.
Yes.
For all levels of priority that are listed, the low, medium, and high, I haven't got a chance personally to go over that, but what is the total cost of all of those?
All combined,
Yeah.
4.8 million.
all total, it's 4.8 million. The question was what the total, if everything was done that's listed in the different priorities, high, medium, and low. They want to know the total dollar figure on that.
And that's not including additional things that need looked into closer, as been said multiple times? Okay.
Correct.
What things is, you were just saying that was right, what wasn't included? Because I kind of thought Todd said most of the things were included.
Her follow-up question, Todd, was, does that not include extra things that need to be done? My answer to that is yes, based on my question to you of all the statements of more investigation needs to take place. More use of structural engineers, electrical engineers. So that's the question and the follow-up.
I don't know how to address another rule that we've already talked about, that we've tried to price in, that language about there is some additional investigation. Now, that could mean is the wall 6 inches wide or is it 12 inches? Some of that is just a matter of, because as Julie mentioned, they didn't measure, which wasn't part of the scope. And I don't think your other firms measured and got to that nuance as well. So I'm trying to remind that we're at the same level as your other estimates are as well, as far as specificity on these numbers. So the pricing is in there with the understanding that there is some unknown there. That's just the nature of how that was put together.
Sure.
Am I saying something correct there, Julie?
Correct. What we're offering you is budgetary numbers, and when we know with any historic building there are unknown or unforeseen issues, we haven't dived into and examined every aspect of this building. But with that, contractors add a contingency factor or a percentage, for the unknown. Everybody loves a deduct, nobody loves an add. So they always try to have a little bit of fluff, if you will, in there in order to accommodate the unknown.
Right, and so those numbers reflect that contingency amount, and you've asked about that in the past. I think that's what we've explained, that there's not a line item for that, but each specific contingency line item, but there certainly is a percentage above what the real cost is estimated to be to provide that pad for the extra work that is, as you pointed out, additional research. So those numbers are meant to be realistic. Our goal was not to try and lowball this price and then say, oh, well, in the future, we've got to add in another X amount of dollars. That doesn't do anybody any good. So we really tried to go into this with ratio to say, what is it going to cost? Don't undermine these numbers. This is, you need to know and be realistic in expectations on extra costs. You know, provide that contingency in each of those line items. So I don't know if I can explain it or try and answer it any other way. That I think your other firm, when they looked at this building and looked at your new build options, were probably in the same place we are with these numbers. They're good estimates. They're not, I don't remember a line by line item in those estimates presented in the public meeting either that were any more specific than what we're talking about tonight. So I think it's an apples to apples comparison about what you're looking at as far as estimated costs of projects.
To assist the board, is there any way, is there further detail that you might have access to that would kind of get into more descriptive of than what the totals are for us to assess when we're looking at the decisions upon us? You know, these are kind of very, they're totals, but just any further description that we can discuss to make sure that we're kind of assessing the whole big picture.
Can you repeat the question a little bit? You were diving out on me. I don't know if you heard it.
No.
I apologize. So looking at the three levels of priorities, there's a description and a dollar amount. Is there any way to get further definition of what some of those line items might be to understand the mechanics of where the numbers came from and further definition, or is it used the basic square foot price, or is some other mechanism based on square foot versus like more of the line item detail?
Some of the worksheet numbers. I guess we can inquire about that and get what we can to you.
Yes.
Since the gentleman on the screen had mentioned an apples to apples comparison, the question I would have then, I know this is kind of rhetorical at this point, but after completing the proposed renovation, would the building be brought up to all current code and best building practices as it relates to new construction, functionality, as well as safety, and I kind of read wrong. The functionality and safety as it pertains to the students.
This would be a code compliant, safe building set to meet the education needs of the students in this corporation for decades to come.
I was looking for a yes or no. Would it compare to a new construction? This is a yes or no. It's just to sum up all the back and forth all night about historic value and saving a building. When it relates to safety and functionality, would it compare to a new construction?
I'll say yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the goal, right?
I just hope that makes the paper.
Yeah, we're at a disadvantage when we can't see the person speaking or what happens after the question. So, you know, all I can do is answer the question. I can hear a little bit of background, but, you know, that's kind of a little bit of a disadvantage for us.
Go ahead.
There have been a lot of comments made that the school isn't very safe right now, that, you know, it's unsafe. We have to worry about sending our children into the school. The roof might collapse. The ceiling might fall down. With COVID, there's lots of concerns of air quality. Do you see a problem with air quality if we do this project and do the renovation? Will we fix all of those problems? Will we have a safe building for air quality?
Yes, I believe if you are going into this project and you are renovating the heating and cooling systems, that will also entail a ventilation system and will improve the air quality that you have now. I know my office is implementing additional items. Now, when this report was produced, we were still on the low end of the learning curve with COVID, but we've been implementing UV lights into our office in order to kill germs. That's not something we may be accounted for, but depending on where our environment is going when the construction documents are being put together, those are items we can look at to make sure that the children are getting the best environment as far as physical, air, light, and safety that they can have.
Yeah, you're talking about new mechanical, new electrical, new plumbing. It's a new system. That's why when the gentleman asked me, is this as good as a new building? You're building in new mechanical, electrical, plumbing. All that is new, so that's the intent is to provide that safety and quality and security and air quality.
Can I ask a question? Because I don't think I'm understanding. You did say, though, that you don't have to bring everything up to code because it was grandfathered in.
We could not hear that question.
The question is, on the heels of that explanation, with your statement that the building would be as good as new construction, the reference is back to the fact that, but not everything has to necessarily be brought up to code if it's grandfathered in.
You're missing the second part of that qualification on the code issue. It was a timing, what Julie was talking about was regarding timing. So certainly you want to bring it up to code through the whole project, but that you could phase it, and that's where it comes back to your desires about what your first, second, third priorities are, or you can just do it all at once. I mean, that's certainly doable, but you've got to bring the code, you got to bring the building to safety standards.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You start on this pipe that has all this asbestos, and that pipe you get to, you gotta encapsulate it, or what you gotta do, and what you gotta do to keep the fiber from floating around in the rooms.
When you deal with the pipes wrapped in potentially asbestos, what do you have to do when you deal with that?
You abate it, so you hire a contractor to take it off. It'll be part of the removal of the existing HVAC or MEP system, mechanical, electrical system. Mechanical system, through heating and cooling, the old one has to go out. And as part of that demolition, you abate, you take out the asbestos. It's done all the time, it's not a big deal. There are contractors who do sort of work, and so it would be abated, it would be taken out, just take fast. When folks are not in the building, so it wouldn't be done, during school hours or something like that. It would be one of those projects that would be done out during break. So you abate it, you get the right contractor to take care of that. It's done on a regular basis in the buildings.
Do you have an idea on that cost?
I've offered to bring a contractor in to get that number, and we just need access to do that. But I would say, while you're getting your next question up, I'll just go back to what we said earlier, and that is, those costs are assumed as part of the mechanical, electrical numbers in your budget.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Next question.
To keep our kids in this building, when you're opening up the walls and filling the air with asbestos, how safe is that?
Alan?
Okay, I heard a laugh, but I couldn't hear the question.
The laugh came second. The question was, when you're dealing with asbestos while kids will still be using the facility, how safe is that?
I just said asbestos would not be a big deal while the students were in the school building. I don't understand that question.
Okay.
Asbestos is not dangerous unless it is what they call friable, which means that it is abrasively removed and becomes part of the air particles. So if you are not going and, disrupting that asbestos pipe wrap, it is not going to get into the air and interfere with the air quality and provide to these students. So what's required is that you maintain it and that you do not damage the material. As long as it's not getting disturbed, you are not in any kind of hazard. It's when it becomes friable that it's damaging.
Thank you. Any other specific questions?
I have one. Yeah. Going back to the original, one of the original questions about the environmental study, would an assessment on mold from the water coming in the basement be a part of that? And is any of that built into, the potential for that built into remediation costs and so forth?
As part of the environmental study, if there's potential mold from the flooding in the basement or the water issues below grade, is that included in an environmental study, and is that cost included?
Julie, are you familiar with that aspect? I've seen them done separate. I've not seen one contractor do all of them. Can you comment on that?
They can do testing in an environmental site assessment for mold. Remediation of mold, most remediation of hazardous materials are going to be done by an outside contractor. So I think your best bet to get a handle on that is, as Todd said, that he's offered to get somebody in to evaluate that, to actually get in there and look at what you have. I don't think we have enough information at this point in time to give you an accurate assessment.
Todd, you remind me, was that an email offer to me? Because I'm struggling to recall that.
Yeah, it's been a couple months ago.
Okay, thank you.
When I was asking for your asbestos report, that's required. And
Yeah.
so it was in that vein. I said I'd like to get that report so that I could bring a contractor in on that.
Yeah, thank you. I do recall that now. So, yeah, I'm happy to report we've got an asbestos study underway. Any other questions for, go ahead.
Todd, if the school board decides, or, they decide that we're going to move to Warrenton, what are two options for the building? What are two other options if it's not a school anymore? What's two options that we can keep? If we want to keep the building, where is an option for us?
I don't know if I have an answer. LaCrosse is a very small community. It is not near things, and I'm not saying that in the derogatory part. It's just the reality of a reuse. And I think the best use for this building is as a school, and that's why we're putting so much resources and time into trying to help that happen. I think when this building goes dark, it's going to be dark for a long time. Could there be other uses? Certainly. Julie mentioned apartments, certainly could be converted. The challenge with that is that you said you want to continue to use the gym, so having a different use of the old building while you're continuing to use the gym for an education purposes brings up a number of security and other questions that I don't know how to answer off the top of my head. My job is to find new uses for old buildings, so believe me, I could come up with a list of things you could use that building for, but real estate development's all about location, and I think we're limited in reuse opportunities on that building based on its location if its original use is no longer its use. It's very difficult to reuse buildings when you continue to use the gym, which I'm glad you're talking about, you're continuing to use the gym, but it does create challenges with adjacency. So certainly there are ideas. I can give you a bunch. It doesn't do us any good to think about options for ideas until we understood the economics of the location. And I know that's a lot of language and a lot of words, but we can come up with a list of all kinds of reuses for the building, but location's a challenge, and the adjacent use of the gym causes reuse potential problems. So that's really the way I can answer it right now. There are apartments that have been put in old buildings and old schools all over, and there are funding sources to do that. The scoring numbers on that, not to get too much into the weeds, look at things that aren't nearby LaCrosse, and so I'm not sure how that's going to score for the subsidies that are needed. So I don't think there's a straightforward answer, and part of our, what word? part of our hope is that it can continue to use in its original use as a school function, and some function, whether it's this age group or a different age group or some other education purposes. That's the best use for this building right now. And we can send you ideas all day long, but I'm concerned about location and for those ideas.
One last thing, I just wanted to thank you so very much for coming and showing everybody the plans. I think they're beautiful, and I see so many Save LaCrosse High School signs in LaCrosse. So I thank you so very much.
We appreciate the time. This is not the ideal way to do this, but it's just the way we had to do it tonight. Sorry we can't be there in person. It just was not feasible. I do appreciate your willingness to at least listen and take in this information. We're certainly glad to be a resource moving forward. We think this building can be renovated. There are other schools around. I can certainly give you those ideas all day long, where you could look at schools that have been renovated. We're glad to provide that if you want to go on a tour. COVID has been challenging in that example, but this building can be renovated and could be scaled if you don't need the whole building. You could mothball part of it to reduce cost. So you mentioned a couple of times the 3-story nature. That's fine. If you don't need all the space, maybe you do part of it and just leave the rest of it mothballed for now until you do need it. Projected hopeful growth. I think that gives you the way to grow without having to add another addition in the future. So I just think there's lots of options out there for you. And hopefully this study helps you think through some of those ideas. I think Julie's given you some good information to think about and some ideas and designs. We can look into, I think our takeaway one question was, is there some additional specificity under the Thompson Blank estimate? We can look into that and get that to you. And if you want us to bring in the consultant on the asbestos so we can get that number specific, glad to do that as well. So I guess that'd be my wrap up. I would encourage you to consider this. I think it's a viable option, would give you lots of good usable square footage for the future. And I appreciate your time and listening to us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, I've got a list of people that have signed in, because what I will essentially tell you right now, that was a very good hour and a half talking about 25% of the issue. Very important 25%, the facility. But we're still left with, per the recommendations I made in February, and have continued with more recently, the other 3 spokes here of the issue, the other quarters, which is enrollment, programming, and budget. And there was no reason for me to lob any of those 3 issues to Todd or Julie. We needed to hear and talk about the facility. But I've got a list of names here of people signed up. I guess the general question I have is, what else do you want the board to think about, to hear, to know? And if you've already spoken and don't need to, just wave me off. But I have Julie Griffin at the top.
Thank you. I'm looking at a memo that you had put online from May 5th, and it very graciously acknowledges the process that we're going through. There were 2 things on there that came out of this particular memo. You said on the heels of our 2 public open house information sessions, it was clear that our school community, school board desired more information regarding the proposed future of the Tri-Township High School. We heard 2 clear messages. First, whether another assessment of cost to renovate the LaCrosse High School could be complete, and second, is Tri-Township ensuring competitive bidding with respect to obtaining building proposals? And then on the very last sentence of this memo, it said that the Tri-Township Board will begin laying out a plan to engage in a design-build process to gather additional proposals. So what my questions are is, how many proposals have you already looked at for building in Wanata? Because the only one I've heard of is adding 5 classrooms. How did you arrive at that particular decision? Was that at some point before I ever got involved in this? Did the community have something to say, an input in that? When did you receive those proposals? And, you know, was it ever made available to the public? I'm hearing the cons on both sides. And sounds to me like what we've just seen in this presentation is a lot closer to helping us understand what's possible. From what I'm hearing about wanting to put in 5 classrooms, that is just like the very first step, like moving part of the street and getting real estate, and then there's still no, you decided just on those 5 classrooms to start.
Okay. So basically, we've heard from Performance Services, and they gave a presentation here back, 2 nights back in February and March. And that was just one idea on potentially 5 classrooms at Wanata. Because with the existing empty spaces we already have, we feel confident that would meet our needs for the current size high school that we are. Now, so we've heard just that. We haven't heard anything else from anyone else. But that would be, if this board chooses to go down that path, we would open that up and potentially have, hopefully, 5 to 10 firms give us. But we got from Performance Services basically what Save LaCrosse High School has gotten from Ratio. So that's the 2 things that we do have right now. Okay. In response to athletic facilities, we're sitting in it. This is the Tri-Township athletic facility. Our baseball and softball fields are here in LaCrosse. We've never had a consideration of having that go up to Wanata.
So if you move physically, and it's a process, it's not going to happen overnight. If you physically move the educational part up to Wanata, you still have to maintain this building, you still have risk management mitigation, you still have all the systems that have to be, and in my mind, I would think that the insurance, maybe you guys are self-insured, that it would be higher on a semi-empty building because something that's close to abandoned, it's more open to being abused. And it becomes in the insurance world, it's an attractive nuisance. That's what the insurance world calls it.
Yes, and so I would tell you that I would love to be a part of that conversation as to, I'm going to reference Mr. McMahon's question, if that's what the choice is made, what can we do to reuse that building and keep that building? And so that it doesn't sit abandoned, so that it is a useful part of the town of LaCrosse. That would be the answer to that. Is that? Mm-hmm. Because the issue is simply just that it's gotten to a point, again, as a facility, but other factors also come into play, budget, enrollment, programming, that points educationally to Wanata and a single campus.
Okay, so if it's not being used as a school, and you want to continue to use the building, what I heard them saying is that we are probably going to be entitled to a lot of different types of grants because it's on the historical register as a school. But if it's not considered a school, I'm wondering if that would negate some of those grant opportunities.
I would need a lot more information on that myself as well.
Yeah, because if you're looking at commercial use and not educational use, you're still going to have to figure out how to fund it. And then you're still going to have the situation you have now, 2 facilities trying to figure out how to fund it.
Right. And that's what we We do not want to be a landlord of that facility, but we want to be a partner in figuring out what to do, what's the next best thing to do with it, if that's the choice that's ultimately made.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Lisa Rosencrantz?
Yes, so can you elaborate on how moving to Wanata is going to increase programming while you reduce staff? Are you able to elaborate on that yet?
I'm sorry, I was trying to decipher the other name, but again?
Are you able to elaborate on how adding 5 classrooms onto Wanata is going to increase the programming while reducing staff? Can you elaborate on your plans to?
Yes, I can. Being on a single campus, we can create a schedule that is pre-K to 12. And so being all together, we can reduce redundancies and, I'm confident, still actually offer more. By being able to make a schedule where we are all together, we can move the chess pieces on the board where they need to be, when they need to be there. We can pair up an available teacher, staff member, aide with a group of students. And we don't have 10 miles preventing us from doing so.
So what programs are you going to offer that you don't currently offer now?
We could come up with elective classes.
Like what?
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you an example. We have one music teacher right now, K to 12. So at LaCrosse, I have a band class and a choir class, and it's the first 2 hours of the day. If it's during English or math, those kids can't be in that class. But because I share that teacher with Wanata, I only get them for 2 hours. Where if we're all in one building, they could teach band first hour, she could teach band 6th hour. Now all of a sudden, I can offer more to our high school kids that way, because she's a K to 12 teacher.
So you currently don't have a high school band right now?
Huh? We do, but there's more kids that would like to be in it, but it doesn't fit their schedule. So they have to make a choice between taking band and taking.
So what new programming are you going to introduce that isn't available already?
We're gonna have more opportunities for kids to join the band, more kids to be in an art class.
So
there's more business classes. There's business pathways now, or there's graduation pathways that kids have to graduate on, starting with these sophomores. It's not just get a diploma and that's it. They have to go through, there's 3 buckets they have to go through. Diploma is number 1. There's skills that they have to get in bucket number 2. And in bucket number 3, there's SAT, ACT, CTE classes, so career and tech classes, vocational classes that we have at Michigan City. But we need to offer more to our kids here. We need more opportunities.
Right, so what opportunities are you going to offer them?
I'll give you an example today. Mrs. Kramer and I, our guidance counselor, we're talking about trying to find a pathway for art, so that kids that are interested in art can go down that pathway. But we have to offer more art classes. We can't just offer the basic art classes that we have now. We have to go to the next level, and then partner with somebody in the community around us.
So you aren't able to do that just by using the resources and moving to Wanata. You're going to have to branch out with the community. What stops you from doing that here?
I can't offer all the classes. She's here 2 hours a day.
Why can't you hire more staff? I mean, you've increased the spending for administration, but you've decreased the spending on teacher salary. Why is that?
Recently we've decreased administrative staff by absorbing many positions and cutting some staff to part-time.
Okay, so you've decreased your spending on administration and you have increased the spending on teachers? Is that what you're telling me?
As a matter of fact, we actually did hire an additional staff member this year, thanks to CARES Act money, to help service kids and socially distance at Wanata. So I guess the answer to that question would be yes.
We can't increase staff if we only have 100 students. The way we pay our staff, our payroll is paid by our ADM. If you have 100 students, that's how you get your money to pay your staff. You can't hire 2 art teachers to can't hire a full-time art teacher in a building with 100 students. You can't afford it. Your
It's gonna be the
payroll
same number of students,
won't
no
allow
matter
it.
what building the students are
But we
in.
can have one art teacher that can work 8 hours in one building, not just 2 hours in the building. We're sharing her right now.
So I don't
So
get
she
8
can
hours
only be
or
in
2
this
hours.
building 2 hours a day, because we share her with Wanata. That doesn't, you don't understand what I'm saying? She's here 2 hours, she goes to Wanata for the rest of the day. She's a full-time art teacher, but we only have her for 2 hours.
It's a 10-minute drive for crying out loud.
Well, okay, but think about that. It's a 10-minute drive, but yet if there's a class period and she's missing 10 minutes of it, then that's not a class period. She can't teach that class period. She's driving to Wanata.
They've done it for years. Years and years and years.
But there's
We've all
And years ago, we used to have a music teacher here and a music teacher at Wanata. And then when things happened in 2010, 2012, with the budget and the state and how they changed the formula, we had to go down to one teacher.
You can't afford it. We can't afford the payroll of it.
To pay, obviously, the most expensive thing to run a school system are the people, salary and benefits. Okay? That money comes in from the state through a basic grant. And so in basic, each child, depending on how the formulas work out, but somewhere between $5,500 and maybe $6,200, depending on the year, is how much funding we get per student. And that's what essentially pays for people, for staff.
I have one more question. Have you explored the option of consolidating with South Central? Have you?
Yes, we have. Mr. Stevens and I have talked many times about that, okay? I think others in attendance here tonight have spoken with him more recently about that, but he and I have spoke on a few occasions. We've had that talk.
One big thing along with the building changing is, again, what was mentioned earlier, is this school is getting we're getting half of what we did back in 2010 before the consolidation. We used to get roughly, Mr. Guthrie can correct me, roughly 12,000 per student. We're getting half of that now, roughly half of that, or maybe it's 6,500 now. That changed the whole big picture after we consolidated what we had access to and what programs we could offer. We've been trying to stay alive for the last 10 years after the state changed all the funding formulas that we didn't have any control over. So all the programs that might have been here before, we had to find ways just to survive because almost all of 50% of what we had access to based upon ADM all went away. And that made everything more challenging, and that's why we're in this position in the first place.
So would it make sense to partner with a school corporation that already offers a lot more programming? And they already get over.
Perhaps, but this has always been LaCrosse, Montauk, Tri-Township. I mean, that's who we are. That decision could have been made in the 60s, and we chose not to be an independent, standalone school partnership and now corporation. I mean, it may have to come to that, ma'am. We don't know. I mean, there's no guarantee that adding on to Wanata or remodeling this building is going to move the needle enough for us to be able to stay by ourselves. But that's our goal to try.
I can say on that note that I've been told because of what we presented and people figured out their tax increase based upon what was mentioned during the people walking through the building, that they're having a fit of $40. If we consolidate with South Central, I guarantee it'll be more than $40. If whatever your rates are, the amount of percentage of tax, we have been so blessed to have the lowest tax rates. I think one of, if not the lowest, some of the lowest tax rates in the state of Indiana with the school system. And that whole thing would change and everybody's life would change.
But it would all work for the students, and if you want to do the best thing for the students, that would be the best thing for the students.
I 100% agree. You just need to convince about 2,000 other taxpayers.
And are you thinking about the fact that if you want to save LaCrosse High School, it's probably not going to happen if we're consolidating with South Central?
I think there would be a way that every community could keep a building.
Would we still, I'm sorry, if we consolidate with South Central, would we still not have an empty building? We would have 2 empty buildings, right?
No, we would use all of our buildings. Everyone would keep a building.
The South Central discussion has happened for years and years and years and years. And part of the big downfall for us as community members, and because I look at not LaCrosse as a community and not Wanata as a community, but as a community. So, having said that, the discussion on South Central consolidating, we get zero voice in their school board. Would they love our students? They would love our students because they would be gaining more tax dollars, but we, as a community, would get a big fat goose egg as a voice. And I don't think anybody wants that.
That's not true.
Yes, it is true. That would be.
Not true.
That was the last agreement that was
But if it
discussed.
comes up now in the new discussion, everybody would get a voice because everything would change. It wouldn't be South Central anymore. It wouldn't be LaCrosse, it wouldn't be Wanata. It would be something altogether different.
That would not be saving money.
So it's
Okay, Lisa, back in 2011, when they were doing this, Prairie ended up deciding to go with Dewey, okay?
I'm aware of the story.
Can I finish, please? One of those reasons was because there's a lot of farmers out there. There's a lot of land. People didn't want the taxes that were going to go up if we went to South Central. The lower tax rate was to move to Dewey. And that's why we did that. So if we all consolidate, our taxes are going to go way higher than what we would do either option here.
It's the best thing for the students. It would offer the program. And it
To
would
be
be
travel-
in every community.
To go county, or to go 3 different directions? My child's on the bus 45 minutes.
They already are, so what difference does it really make? South Central already gets over 150 of our students as it is anyways. Because we don't offer the programming that they want to go over there for. And if you think moving the school to Wanata is going to increase programming, it's not going to happen.
Do you
They
think-
could have increased programming here.
Do you
And they
think
could.
that leaving the school here is going to increase programming? If we're already losing 100+ students to South Central? I doubt it.
Do you think adding 5 buildings on Wanata is going to bring them back?
Our students would get lost over South Central. Our kids that are straight A students and the ones that are struggling, they would all get lost over there. They get what they deserve over here, and I say we keep it. If that means moving to Wanata, put everybody in one building.
It doesn't have to mean that.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
I have kids in the school. I know what it means.
You don't know.
Yes?
Can I just say something? I had a question. You were talking about building onto Wanata, and it was going to take, I think this was at the last meeting, like 2 years.
Uh-huh.
To do this school is 9 months, but you want to keep those high school people here for 2 years while you build in Wanata, and you're worried about safety? That don't make any sense to me at all. Why not take this short route, keep the school, fix it up in 9 months, make the kids a good place to go to school and have more square footage than what you can offer in Wanata in 5 classrooms. You're not going to get Valpo. You're not going to get anybody else to come to Wanata because you're going to be squeezed.
There ain't even no room for growth.
Yeah, there's no room for growth in Wanata with an extra 6,000 square feet. If you
Yeah, I'm
get
just
across,
wondering, 'cause
that's
you're-
20,000 square feet here, there's plenty of room to grow.
Okay, a couple things there. We're off, you and I are off here on, if something can be done here in 9 months, it can be done at Wanata in 9 months.
But you guys proposed 2 years.
One of those statements is, from start to finish, by the time bonds happen, the whole process, it could be 1.5 years, 2 years. But these guys saying 9 months was talking about shovel going in the ground. Okay? So do you see where we're off there? So that's a wash. Those are the same things. Now, let's talk square footage and space. Okay? First of all, property-wise, there's plenty of ground there at Wanata to grow. Right now, classroom-wise, yes, we keep talking about 5 new classrooms. That's because there's already one sitting there empty. We have 2 more additional classrooms that people just spread out to this year because they could. Prior to this year, they had shared a space. Our Title I teacher this year. A year ago, that position shared with the technology because that's how few students she has. Here's another example. We have a high school special needs teacher. We have a middle school special needs teacher. We have an elementary special needs teacher. Again, reducing redundancies. Our numbers pre-K to 12 do not in any way, shape, or form support 3 special needs teachers. If we're on one campus, it most likely supports 2. It definitely doesn't need 3 classroom spaces. So 3 classroom spaces are just 2. Here in this high school, we have 6 staff members, 6 full-time teachers that occupy a space full-time. The rest that come here, make that 10-minute drive up the road. They come in for a couple periods here or there, and they use a space. But they already have a permanent space at Wanatah. When all the math shakes out, we need, and I'll even throw in, if we need a high school office, and if we need a central office, that gets us up to needing 8 spaces at Wanatah. I can get us 10 as soon as the wing of 5 classrooms is built on. We have 10 available spaces at Wanatah. And nobody's squeezed in, nobody's cramped. I would love to have that problem soon thereafter. But we are not cramped for space in any way, shape, or form. The enrollment simply does not dictate that. Yes?
Can I ask a question? I'm just wondering, if you're talking about the first phase, now this is the first time I've been in a meeting, so, and it's at 5 classrooms, right? All right, when you put all these kids over there, they have the bathroom there, that's for little kids. You have high schoolers now, where are they going to go to the bathroom? You have one cafeteria. How are you going to feed all those kids, except starting them at 8 o'clock when they get their breakfasts? Then you're going to have, because I went to a very big school before, we started lunch at like 10 o'clock, 10:30. So you've got kids that are eating breakfast, eating lunch at 10, but then you've got kids, those kids don't eat again until they go home and get home at 4 o'clock. It just doesn't seem like in your first phase, in my view, you should add your bathroom and your cafeteria in with your first phase so these kids aren't like squished in. And when you talk about your special needs children, you've got 3 teachers now? You could knock them down to 2. Now, does that mean your special needs kids, kindergarten through 12th grade, how are you going to split them up? Because I know a couple that if they have to go in with little kids, they're not going to be happy. And now they're kind of just getting around a little bit. But when they get to be little kids don't really pay attention to that. But when they get to be teenagers, do you know how mean teenagers can be?
Yes.
But that's the stupid kid because he's going to special ed.
I totally understand. I'm happy.
So I'm just wondering why that kind of stuff wasn't in the first part of your thing. And then also I heard where you're talking about this place being here forever. I've heard that you're already planning on putting on a big, and I know my kids are going to be, or my grandkids are going to be gone by then, but you're going to put on an athletic area somewhere.
Don, that has not, I promise, that has not been discussed.
Huh?
I don't know where that came up, that has not been discussed.
The
athletic facility.
Met with Mr. Shepherd in February, that you were going to have to build some kind of sports arena.
That has not been discussed.
Melanie, you weren't at the meeting, I'm sorry.
If I, that's a dream I've had. I would think if we want to market something that would be awesome for this small school to have, what we talked about is it's either called a field house, or some schools call them a student activity center. Okay? That's where you're mixing in this notion of Mr. Shepherd's pole barn.
Yeah.
Okay?
You said, yes, that's
Yes.
exactly what you said. Because you said, I realized we would need more room if we had more kids for gym classes, science fairs, concert practices. We definitely have to build something up here.
No. You certainly could use that for a lot of awesome things. That would be a great thing for Tri-Township kids. But I did not say we needed that in order to move this school up there. We're mixing a few things here. That is a dream that would be awesome. There's a couple small schools, not anywhere as small as us, that have managed to get a field house. It's great for athletics.
So what happens to the gym that you want to keep forever?
It's not a gym. It is not a gym for hosting events. This is where
extra expense.
it would be. That's
Because
something.
inside recesses and everything, we need it right off, right at the beginning.
You wouldn't. You just wouldn't. Let me go back and address the first 9 questions. I can't juggle all these that easily. There's a restroom in the hallway of 5 classrooms.
Oh,
Okay. Check that.
in
The
the new
cafeteria?
build? Wait, in the new build?
Yeah, in the five
I
classroom
didn't see
hallway.
that in the, I didn't see that. You guys didn't talk about that. You said that would come later.
Yeah.
The bathrooms.
Because you guys are looking at doing a design build, and you're going to be putting it out there, and people have to give you that concept of what that's going to look like. You've gotten one from performance services, but what you will do in developing that criteria is to say, this is what we need, and see what people respond to.
But when performance services first gave us a conceptual idea, they listed a restroom for that 5 classroom wing high school. They had the restroom listed in an option, a second option, not in the base. We said, nah, that has to be in the base, okay? But like Monica just said, we would get all kinds of conceptual things from other people. But so there would be a restroom in the high school hallway for big kids.
Okay.
Cafeteria is big enough. There's 144 seats right there right now. Now, Mr. Gabriel, feel free to jump in here with me on my math. Make sure I'm right, please. But, so we have the most 3 classrooms in there at one time, or do 4 overlap? Okay, 3 classrooms. So our current 3 grade levels. So that put the most kids we have in there right now at any one time, 80? No, 60. Thank you. So we currently have 60 at one time using the cafeteria. And there's enough space and tables and seats for 144. So there's that one.
So then you plan on, if there's enough seats for 144, and you say you have 3 classes going in there at once, and you can put 6 classrooms in there, 6 at the one time, since you have room for them?
No, I wouldn't propose that we wouldn't have to jam 6 in.
Or
Now,
5, or whatever.
we could, if we decided that we could safely and comfortably stay with three lunch periods, then what we're accounting for 13 grade levels. So 3 groups of that.
I must be missing something.
4. So let's call it 4.
You're saying,
4 grade levels.
how many kids go to LaCrosse or Wanatah?
160.
150?
No, I'm asking elementary.
That's elementary, sorry.
Well, just whatever, close to that.
220.
And then you're sending another 100 kids over there.
Yes.
So how are you going to split those up? So, because I don't think, I guess I can't get going in my brain how that should
No,
work.
you're fine. A junior, senior high school, so here's just an idea, again, not set in stone, but essentially grades 6 through 12 as a junior, senior high school, which is the normal configuration, and the elementary pre-K to 5.
Well, that hasn't been that way in a long time.
Didn't you say you got 225 and you're gonna bring another 100, that's 325?
That's
And you're
correct.
gonna split it in half?
Or do you
That's
do
160
three-
people at lunch.
Three different lunch breaks.
Why don't you apply to be the principal?
2/3.
You're on the wrong side. Maybe you should go over there.
Sorry, I couldn't.
I just was wondering, 'cause
Okay.
in my mind, it's not.
And those are good questions. Did I hit all yours?
Yeah, I think so, because you told about the bathroom. But if it doesn't come out that they put that bathroom in, I'd be very upset. I mean,
Okay.
if I had kindergartners and seniors sharing bathrooms,
Right.
that doesn't sound like a good thing to me.
Right.
And I don't think the mixing all the special ed students are a good thing.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Sure, I understand.
When's your next meeting, so I can come back?
That problem, because 7th and 8th and high school teachers are the same. Up to 6th grade, it's grade school teachers. Wouldn't that problem be solved by doing that?
Would it be mitigated slightly? Perhaps. Solved? No. The ultimate solution to our redundancy issue and to improve programming is a single campus altogether. The licensing, if we have ways to add licensing to staff members, and I didn't get to throw this idea out to Ms. Rosenkrantz, but one of our really desirable things to find would be a licensed Spanish teacher. And if we're on one campus, we could actually be a school system that finally does it the right way and teaches students a foreign language starting pre-K, kindergarten, all through.
With one teacher?
With one teacher. Just one. But it's got to be licensed in Spanish.
Okay.
Mine would grade school kids need Spanish.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, that's a huge requirement for going on to four-year college, for one thing. A huge life skill actually leads to improvement of language arts for English as well. Yeah.
Kelly, does your honors diploma require it?
I believe it does, Brian, yes.
3 years.
Yeah, it would start them on a path to honors English. I mean, no, that's a great question. I want to give you a really good answer. If we sit kids out of Tri-Township school system fluent in Spanish, they pick up a phone and they get hired wherever they want to get hired in whatever field they want to do. That would be an awesome thing for our kids.
Can you explain how somebody is going to be able to teach all K through 12 with one teacher? Because I find that hard to believe.
Like licensing and scheduling, those two things together.
Well, if you can pull that off, then you should be able to pull off 2 campuses, because that's some magic.
Scott, did Scott mail it in? Jim DeHaven?
I guess the question I had is why are we listed into this tonight in the study saving the school or that also? And I sat in a meeting and 2 of the board members said they wanted that discussion prior to voting. And the last meeting, you guys voted to pursue moving to Wanata already. So why have you got the horse in front of the cart in front of the horse, I guess we'll say? I don't understand it.
Okay. The best answer I can give you is to go back to my 4 basic tenets for why this is, again, I guess I'll put if in front of it. If the majority of the people that live in these 3 townships want to have their own school called Tri-Township and continue our wonderful small school atmosphere that we have and all the wonderful things that we can give to kids. If that's what we want, I go back to my basic tenets. The facility is 25% of the issue. Budget, enrollment, programming. The only solution that I've been able to come up with that hits on all four, and you can't hit on one and call it done. 2 or 3 out of 4 is not good enough. If we want a long-term future, it's all 4. And the only answer that hits all 4 is a single campus. If it existed somewhere else, I wouldn't have to say in Wanatah. But it's a single campus. Let's say it this way. The solution is a single campus, near more enrollment, near more opportunities, and reduced redundancy. Right now, for us, as we currently are constituted, that makes the answer on Wanatah's campus. So that basically, that didn't necessarily answer your question directly. For me, I didn't see a whole lot of value in this because all of this is about 25% of the problem. Now, the board's got the information now, though. So they've requested more. I will reach out to Todd Zeiger tomorrow and say, what else can you get us from Ton and Blank? So that they fully have everything they need to, and what we voted on previously was that was a simple board motion and a second voting to give me permission to advertise next Thursday's 1028 hearing.
What's
So,
that?
that's the actual by statute process to follow to pursue a project. That's what that is.
So your mind's made up already, basically. Mine's
Why are we
not.
here? Our minds made up already.
That's its question.
Guilty. Mine has been. That's what, because I am totally committed to doing the right thing for kids and Tri-Township schools, because that's what I was hired to do, but I'm not the decider. I'm the recommender. So I've made the recommendation. And I can't now say, well, I recommend we do nothing when I know it's the wrong thing to do.
I think that LaCrosse is getting shorted here a little bit, honestly. You know, we love our school. We have a good ball team. We have good honor roll children. We're small. Redoing this school will be able to offer space for other kids to come in, kids that left because of things that were going on with the educational deal here. I think they can be enticed to come back. We have a lot of North Jetson people here. What happened to your time? You know?
We still have, we have students that
I
come
think these kids would come back. They like that. We have put out a lot of very intelligent people. Judges, for one thing, nurses, doctors, scientists out of this school.
Yeah.
It can be great again. The school has been neglected. We know that. And we know that Wanatah and everybody over there that's from Wanatah wants a one-campus school. But where does that leave us? We're part of that Tri-Township. I know that sounds redundant, but those are our tax dollars too. And we've got kids here that are very proud to be going to LaCrosse High School. If that high school stays, those kids come out of their classroom at the end of the day, they come over here for practice. There's not running back and forth. What is the problem with that? You guys got K through 8. Why do you have to have the high school?
I'm going to speak right now. My daughter is from here. We chose to send our kids to LaCrosse. I'm looking after the education side for these kids. Hire better teachers. My son and daughter have taken Spanish online because we cannot provide for them.
But they're not in the school.
We have more people going to South Central, going to California, to Morgan, because their family, they can all be in one school building. It works out for working families now. And
But if this school is survived, we have survived for many, many years here. And they will survive again. You guys just want everything up in one area.
All right, stop
And
pointing
we're
my way
still
and saying
gonna
that.
bust
I'm
the
on
kids.
LaCrosse Volunteer Fire Department. I live halfway in between LaCrosse and Wanatuck is one community.
Yeah, doesn't seem like it. It really doesn't seem like it. We put
I'm
signs
just
up
trying to
here
make
to
me,
say
I'm
our
on LaCrosse
school,
Fire
and
Department. I volunteer my
haven't
time
started.
in this town. I don't live in town.
I don't either. I don't live in town. What's the purpose?
So
What
what's
did
all
that
this
even
point
say?
in you people, this is not what this meeting is supposed to be about. I hate to get into
Well, it's
LaCrosse
about saving
talk, thing like
LaCrosse.
this, but you keep pointing at me and saying you
No, I
know
said
the
you
people.
all. I didn't, if you feel guilty,
I
that's
don't even
fine.
know who you are or anything.
I don't know you either.
Hey guys, let's go back to, it's not about saving LaCrosse or saving a building. It's about.
Yes, it is.
No, it's about, there's nothing that says we can't save that building, but it's the heart, it's the heart of what we are looking at. And saving LaCrosse, Tri-Township might well be moving so that our kids can have better.
Yeah.
Change is not a terrible thing.
No, it's not.
Change can be really
I'm
good.
not saying it is, but we need to change that school and fix it. I don't even have a kid that goes here. I don't have a grandchild that goes here, but my taxes go here. And my taxes go to Wanata and whatever.
Okay,
And-
if you
and
want to
we
go on
need-
that point, just pause right there. If you want to go on that point, I didn't want to bring this up because I don't want to take anything away from the town. But do you know why he said that building is not worth investing in to make it, living quarters, apartments?
That's the same reason why
That's the
we
same
question
reason
whether we
it's
want to
not
put that
a
kind
good
of money
investment
into
as a
this school.
taxpayer to put
Obviously,
money
you
in
didn't
a
pay
old
attention to
building.
anything that was said on that screen tonight. The reason, he said that building should be used for educational purposes. And if it's
Because
not,
it's
then
not
it has no
useful for
purpose.
anything else. That was his exact
Because of
statement,
the
Lisa.
location on this gymnasium. Hello, weren't you listening?
Not just that,
Because the gym is here,
not
that
growing
building will be
in LaCrosse,
useless.
and it hasn't
We
grown
haven't
in
even
about
figured out how
105
much it's
years.
gonna cost to demolish it or maintain it.
It's best used for a school because there's tax dollars that can pay to go towards funding, improvements, taking care of things. If you want to give it to make it become a compartment complex, who's going to pay it? You still have to put $3 million into it. Is the school going to put $3 million into it? The school is a taxing unit. The town is a taxing unit. The township is a taxing unit. Which taxing unit will pay for it?
You said you didn't want to be the landlord, but you would be the landlord.
You don't want to be the landlord, you want to give it off to somebody else. Who wants to have the money, the $3 million? A private person that comes in?
I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer.
But it can be fixed cheaper than moving it all the way up there. If you want to be fiscally responsible, it's the cheaper way.
Well, what
We still have to build on and then we still have to do it like the building. We don't understand.
Where you're coming from. As a taxpayer, as an investment standpoint, would you go out and overpay, say, buy an old pickup truck for $10,000, knowing it's gonna break down in 5 years, and have to pay for it again, and again, and again, or say $20,000? We can have a brand new pickup truck. Now, that is a terrible analogy, but just even numbers. Why not spend a little bit more money now, it will save us money in the future.
In building projects, it's almost always cheaper to renovate than it is to build brand new.
But the building will not be up to current code.
He said it would be up to code.
No.
What wasn't up to code?
If that is posted with my face in your newspaper feed,
You better walk out of the building because
We've been recording the whole meeting. We've been recording them for 6 months, ma'am.
That's the way it works. Public building.
I have a question. Who made this? It's the Save LaCrosse, the LaCrosse renovations, 3.8 million.
It's the numbers that come from the ratio.
Well, it's not gonna be 3.8 million, because as a board member, this has been very hard for me. very, very
High
hard.
priority, Melanie.
It's been hard for all of us.
It's high priority.
But I have to look, it's not high priority.
Yes, it is.
When I see LaCrosse renovation, and then it says not included, fire suppression system, exterior lighting, new windows, and low priority pointing. Fire suppression is one of my highest things.
It's
I
on-
don't want my child in here.
Right, that was my next, that's on my question list. Does the Wanata 5 classroom project have a sprinkler system, a fire suppression system built in?
You're still gonna have that empty building, and it's gonna cost you a fortune.
Melanie does it, since that was your highest priority. Does the Wanata 5 classroom project have a suppression system?
It's not built yet.
Hey, we've got
The
too
plans.
many cross conversations going now. We can't interrupt each other. I don't care which side you're on. Let me get a little control back here for a second. I've seen a couple hands. I'm gonna come to you next. I'm gonna go back to Mrs. Griffith.
I know that the board itself, because you're concerned about, administering as you're charged to, and worrying about our children. As a community, I don't know how many people in the town have really thought about it, or maybe this is part of what they are concerned about. If there is no school that is walkable, regardless of what grade level, it will cause the town to have some major financial problems. One is that all of the value of our property is going to decrease. It's not going to increase. Our taxes will go up. It is going to affect the utility and municipal system here. And because you guys right now, with the school being used fully, it is paying into that system. If you take that out, that means all the people in the community are going to have to pay more for their utilities, while the property values are going down. And this is just the beginning of what's coming to my mind while I'm sitting here thinking. And I know you guys probably don't care, because I'm not aware of any of you actually living right here. But this is serious to us, to have a walkable school, regardless of what age group is here. And I just think that needs to be brought up, and that's something that the community needs to keep at the forefront of their thoughts. That it's not just the school. It's not just the school. We're looking at the life of this community.
I understand that, I do, but, again, I'm from Prairie Township. There hasn't been a school there for years. Not for years. My son comes here, my other son came here, and we've got, we have to look out for the children. That's something
We gotta
that,
look at, you keep saying community, community. We are all community.
You're right, Tri-Township.
We gotta look out for everybody. You guys don't even have a town anymore.
Oh.
We still have a town.
I'm new here. Just Miss Griffith is speaking. No more interruptions.
I know that you guys, you have term limits, and this has been a problem evidently for many, many years. Some of it maybe couldn't be financially taken care of, but it seems to me that maybe within your term that you guys may have consciously decided not to put investment into upgrading some things here and only doing repairs as needed, which is not proactive, it's reactive. And so it's just my observation, maybe it's just the way I'm sensing it, but my sense is that as a board, the current members, that you guys are more reactive in the way you take care of things, whether it's this building or anything else that you have in your control. And I just think that that might be some self-reflection as board members that you might want to consider going forward.
I appreciate the comment. The one statement that I usually say in rebuttal to that is that decision predates all of us. Somebody way, way back
Oh, I get that.
decided that building would serve out its life at some point. That's my take. That's just my take on it. I don't have knowledge of that, but that's my take on it. There came a point well before the year 2000, possibly before 1990, maybe as far back as the 70s, where a group of people said, we can't bring 1915 up to pick one of those years. And so we get what we can. And you guys got a lot. You got more than most people on borrowed time with that building.
Which is, the board works as a board unit, we're all individuals but with one vote. And recommendations, just like Mr. Shepherd came on to represent our corporation and to try to look out for the safety of the children, he made a recommendation a year ago to start looking at this process to try to make sure our kids and our corporation was looking at the big picture, what was best for the whole big picture for the corporation to make sure we have longevity to it. I've been on board for 22 years now, if I make it to 12/31 of this year. And I've been part of the consolidation after the point for 10 years. I'm still one vote, and every superintendent prior to Mr. Shepherd have said the same thing, that nobody has ever made the recommendation to start pouring millions of dollars into a building built in 1915. We work with the superintendent's recommendations. We try to keep our kids safe. We try to offer the best programs. And there's over 200 years of experience between the people up here and our uncles and our cousins and our fathers who have dedicated our lives to serving this community to try to look out for the best interests of these kids, to look out for the best interests of the corporation, to make sure that we have a desirable location for people that want to be drawn to. And until a year ago, we didn't have that. Before a year ago, we had a desirable location in southern LaCrosse County that was drawing people. With all the negativity that has happened in the last year, I can't say that's the case anymore. Every person on this board has no momentum, no motivation other than do the right thing on behalf of the kids, and that's where it ends. And if no money has been put into that building, it's because of recommendations 20, 30, 50, 80 years ago, and it just makes no sense to buy a 1982 car and put $20,000 into it right now. And that's the issue that has been.
So you're saying that each board is
we all have one vote.
Consciously
no, we all have
semi-neglected this property because in the future, we're gonna move. And
no,
each board is in the future,
what I'm saying is we all have one vote to make a decision.
decision.
We all have one vote to make a decision, and that's today going forward, and it was many years in the past based on recommendations where we are today.
Well,
so many things have changed.
The anger that
Can I please talk? Can I talk now? For the last 10 years, so many things have changed that I mentioned earlier that you have no clue if you've not sat on this board and dealt with the criticisms like what you're mentioning. When I give my life to this place and try to do what's right for this community, and I've dedicated my whole life for so many different reasons because I love the people in this community that try to do the right thing. It's more than sitting up here once a month. It's what you do behind the scenes, trying to look out for the best interest every single day. And so many things have changed in the last decade that you don't have visibility to what I mentioned earlier. Right. The whole funding formula changed where half of our money went away overnight because of a decision made downstate. We couldn't control that. That was something we had no control over. Half of our money went away. We were in survival mode for 3 or 4 years. We still are because of the funding formula changes and decisions made downstate that we have no control over. There's a lot of things, the environment we're living in with COVID and all the change and the things that we're all being challenged with has all changed the world we live in. The kind of kids that what they want today is different than what they wanted 10 years ago or 20 years ago. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there's so many even names that are from this area that you would have thought there was a no-brainer that they would have took their kids and they would have put them in Winnetaw and LaCrosse schools because that name has always been a Winnetaw or LaCrosse student. They aren't coming here anymore. The desirable locations now is people want change and they want people stay in jobs for 2 years anymore. They don't stay in jobs 20 years anymore. They want the Starbucks coffee for $8 because that's the thing to do and they want to food. Us marketing this school, a 1915 school, is very, very hard to do, and it has been as long as I've been in office. And we've looked at 20 different directions of how to fix that. How do we find a way to exist this school? And we've been, for 20 years, we are being criticized. For this whole time, we've been criticized because we want to close on the school, we want to close on the school. Give us some credit that the school has been in existence in this long. How many other schools are around that are still in existence? Give us some credit that we've actually kept it open this long. We're doing everything we can to keep this school in existence and to make sure that we're looking at the emotional part of what LaCrosse has to lose. Because I would be upset if I was in LaCrosse too, if I was at the risk of losing a school. It's very emotional and nobody wants to do it. But what's going to allow us to succeed in the future?
My question or suggestion, you say that enrollment is an issue, because we need more students to be able to pay for the teachers and whatnot. I'm sure that high school students wouldn't want to come to a school that's, falling apart. But if you were to renovate it, it seems to me that that would interest folks to come back. And I would love for Wanata to have a complete high school one day. A complete high school, not just 5 classrooms. But I think it would be, a really good service to LaCrosse to renovate. It sounds great. I think a lot of, students might want to come back once it's renovated. It sounds like a great idea, but, so it's, y'all's decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have just a question more than, I don't want to get into an argument with anybody. First of all, we're Wanata people. I graduated from LaCrosse, our son graduated from LaCrosse, for those of you that don't know. When you were talking back about the 5 classrooms and that there was space where people had spread out, my question is, unfortunately in this day and age with COVID, we have to think social distancing. Would that still be a possibility with only 5 classrooms? I know that's the way it is now. But 5 years from now, hopefully it won't be, but it's something I have to think about.
Right.
Something I'm curious about.
Yes, I mean, obviously, COVID puts a wrinkle into everything we think about, and I understand the point you're making on that, totally. But hearing me say we can put anything together right now doesn't sound very appealing, so I understand what you're saying on that. I'm going to finish. Go ahead.
I had a couple questions. First, I want to go back to something that Tim just had said. You said that you don't just sit here once a month, but we all don't know what you do behind the scenes. And I think that's part of the problem. We all don't know what you do behind the scenes because you do it in executive sessions.
I'm talking DJing, I'm talking serving people, I'm talking making $1,000 dinners for a kid, I'm talking coming in and doing.
But there's so much more too.
Talking to, I dedicate my life to him, and it doesn't even relate to the board, it's because it's the right thing to do.
But
it has nothing to do with what we do. Everything that we do, there's been no hidden agendas. That we have no hidden agendas other than spending a year trying to do the right thing.
Then talk to us.
What makes the most sense for us?
There's 5 of you. Look how many people care. There's a room full of people that care, people that have ideas, people that want to have input.
Agreed.
Maybe it wouldn't be so divided if you hadn't just all decided on our own. We know better. We're just going to do it in the closed door meeting because we can talk, because we don't have to deal with all those people.
That's not true.
Oh, one of the board members said that specifically. We have to meet in closed door meetings because it's the only way to get business done. That was the quote. So there is people who think that you have to sit behind and that you have to make all the decisions on your own. That's a heavy burden for the 5 of you to carry, because if you make the decision, everybody's going to remember that decision for a very, very long time to come. If the town starts to fail, who's going to be blaming? You guys. Why do you want that burden? Why not include the people? Make it an inclusive process.
I think that's why we're having all these.
Now, how long has it been? By the time he already made the decision in his recommendation, he did that at a meeting when he came and changed, didn't have it on the agenda until the day we got there. We didn't even know that was going to be talked about. Why not put out and say, hey, we're having a meeting tonight and it's going to be about the strategic planning of moving the school. Put that information out. People wanted to know. You guys all knew what was going to be talked about that day. You had to know what was going to be coming, but you didn't let anybody else know what was going to be coming.
So the lack of a pristine process is what's got you, really.
There's lots of things, but that would be one of them. Okay. I mean, it's not easy.
If I come and follow the town council, I'll learn how to do this properly?
Well, absolutely. Please come.
Absolutely?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
3 years ago was the last time we had an executive session. Another thing that another board member said, LaCrosse does it all the time, the town does. No, 3 years ago, 1. Because we talk about the things in our meeting. Even if it's hard, even if we have people that come in mad because something's going wrong, we still talk about it in front of those people. Because that's part of the whole process. We represent the people. That's all we've asked, is that you guys represent us and listen to us. If people want to talk and say what they feel about something, don't call us a bully because we sent an email to them. I mean, that's been done too. It's like, if people want to go and talk, and they feel like they needed to come and talk to all of you, because Mr. Shepherd sat in a meeting and talked all about enrollment numbers. Unfortunately, the numbers that he used when he presented in that meeting didn't match what the Department of Education said. So you guys only heard what the department, or what he said, not what the Department of Education says. That's what concerned us. Is like, you said you completely trust Mr. Shepherd to give all the information, but then as we look at the information, it doesn't always match. LaCrosse wasn't having declining enrollment. It was Wanatah that was having declining enrollment, but you said...
Can you pinpoint to the reasons why? Is that out of your data search, out of your research?
Well, the Department of Education doesn't actually track that. They track numbers and the mobility numbers.
Exactly, and you interpret numbers.
Right, but you said it was LaCrosse that lost numbers.
I don't know that I've ever,
Tri-Township.
never gathered that.
He did in the meeting. I have it written in the notes, and I'm sure we recorded it. But yes, he said it was LaCrosse that lost the numbers.
I'm sorry, I've never gotten that impression.
Right, because pretty early on, we came out with the information to show that was wrong.
It's looking into the future is why what's coming from Wanatah is why we're
Us too.
motivated to make.
Yeah, us too. I mean, I think that we all are trying to look into what goes into the future. But I had another question, and it was back to the fire suppression. That was a huge item for you in the other meeting. And so I had wondered, does the Wanatah 5 classroom addition have a fire suppression system? That was a major priority.
I answered your question.
So what was it again?
We have not done that yet.
But you guys have spent way more time on the Wanatah. Moving forward, we're already voting to have a public hearing, all that. We made a decision to move forward in that direction, but we don't have a plan. I mean, you were very critical of a 69-page assessment report with a lot of questions about every single thing. How many page report has Performance Services provided?
You know, Kelly, I will say, that's just one of the things I hit on out of the 69 pages.
That's great. They gave you 69 pages to look through and find.
There's plenty of things.
So what did Performance Services give? How many pages is their assessment report? Does Wanatah have a fire suppression system in the remodel that was done a couple years ago?
I do not know the answer to the fire suppression question.
Melanie, do you? Because that was a very important thing. You send your children there. Does it have a fire suppression
Kelly,
system?
You're right. It is very important.
So does it have one? I mean, it was huge tonight. So
it was huge.
If we did a remodel a couple years ago, did it have it?
And so is the staircase, and so is all the updates. It's very important.
I'm going to make the assumption we can suppress fire at one time.
I will say, being on a single level, maybe not perceived as big of importance, I guess you would say, or it's quite as high of a priority in a building versus a building that's 3 stories.
When they say fire suppression system, is that a sprinkler system?
Yes.
And so Wanatah does or doesn't have a sprinkler
I
system?
do believe they have it over the stage, correct?
So I'm not sure, we don't have the details of what this was conclusive either, that's why I asked for the detail, what is.
Right.
What is
Well, I was wondering, we did a project a few years ago and then a few years before that, and I don't think it has a fire suppression system in it.
Thank you. What else you got on your list?
How many teachers, you said there was going to be the ability to use all these teachers K through 12. So how many are licensed to be able to go? I know music teachers might be, art. Is there anybody else that you have on staff right now that has a dual certification?
I don't have it in front of me. What else do you have?
Well, that was a huge programming part, so I thought maybe you would know that one.
You have a 69-page report put out from specialists that we can see.
It's online. It's on the school's website.
Save LaCrosse.
It's on Save LaCrosse too, the 69-page report.
That's ours.
Oh, they only have what the Save LaCrosse High School raised the funds for with the people engaged with preservation. I don't think, has the school provided or spent any money to get anything from Rachel?
No.
Okay. Has the school spent any money for Performance Services to do like an assessment report?
No.
The 5 bathrooms, you said now does include the restrooms. Because at one time it was the restrooms, and then there was like the bonus that was or it was the 5 classrooms and the bonus was the restrooms. And that was an additional fund. So now are you saying it actually is going to include the restrooms?
Yes.
So did that change? Because now the price went down for the construction. So we added bathrooms and the project became cheaper.
I'd have to check on that.
Yeah, because you lowered it down to be under that controlled threshold number after you,
What's that?
that
What's the
2.72
control
number?
Threshold number?
2.72, it's that number you keep using in things.
2.72, okay.
So I was just wondering where those bathrooms came into there.
They're in the hallway?
No, in the funding. The building construction became cheaper when you added restrooms in.
I see. That's pretty good business.
It is. So you did that all on your own?
Next question.
That was it.
Thank you. All right. I think we're ready to call for this.
I'm still on the list. You had me sign up, but you never called on me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Could you start by explaining the timeline that you're looking at for this project? We haven't really had a clear end date in sight, and where are the key milestones along the way for this?
General timeline.
That's your criteria, but you would have to put together your criteria.
Thank you, Monica.
With your criteria developer, and then put together your criteria team that will do all that.
Yes, our criteria developer would take care of all that.
And the last one you guys had, I know Dick was on the team the last time you guys did the building, and
yes.
so, I mean, it would be the same process.
But you guys have an idea of when you think this would be complete, like the start of school year, I imagine, right?
I don't think we could do anything at either place that would be ready for next school year.
Okay. And can you explain what exactly is the objective behind the 1028 hearing that you guys are having? Like, what is the end result of next Thursday's meeting? What will be decided?
If it's decided, that is a 1028 hearing to decide on the project at Wanatah.
Okay, so that would initiate the process of moving forward with that. Now, if there was going to be, if the cost of the project ends up being above 2.72 million and it becomes subject to the controlled project requirements in statute, and it could potentially be subject to a petition and remonstrance process, when would those hearings be held?
I don't have the answer to that.
If you use the criteria developer and that criteria, that all what you're looking for has to come under that number.
So you guys would be deliberately seeking to be below that $2.72 million threshold?
And that's just the way that the project works. That's how it works.
Well, you're choosing to have it below a number, correct? Because if it was above that number, you would be subject to a different process and different requirements in statute.
That's just that's how that process works, is that you define it that way.
Okay, so you're defining the project to be less than 2.72.
I'm just telling you that when you do that criteria developer, you develop your criteria, and that's done by your criteria committee. You kind of put in what it is that you think has to be in it, and then you put it out there publicly, you give notice, then you allow people, contractors to come in to give what they think is going to be, how it's going to look, the design, but they have to kind of make sure that it stays there at that, so it's an equal process for everybody who's coming in.
Okay.
So you've got to do it so that you have some equity in terms of the process, so people who are bidding, it's a fair process to people who are bidding.
So
You can't do a bait and switch on people who are bidding.
okay, and so it's also not going to be a bait and switch for the taxpayers where it says it's below 2.72 million and it later comes back more expensive and then tries to circumvent the process for petition remonstrance process, correct?
You've got that limit, and that's how you set that up with your criteria. We did this, that's how you develop, you did the addition with the Wanatah building as well.
Okay, so you set this limit of 2.72 million. Why? Why set that number? Why try so hard to avoid a petition and remonstrance process? Are you concerned that the taxpayers might reject it? Are you concerned that it gives the taxpayers too much involvement in this? What would be the reason for that?
No, we welcome involvement from our taxpayers.
So then why set it below 2.72 million? That's a really specific number for you to cite for that project. It happens to be the exact same number that I pointed out in February was the controlled project threshold. That's not really a coincidence, I think.
I don't know if that's accurate.
What makes you think it isn't?
I'm just not sure that it is. That's all
Okay.
I'm
Have you guys hired any consultants yet for this project to determine costs or estimates, or have you guys truly hired nobody to date?
Hired?
Yes, contracted.
Contracted? No.
No, you've signed no contracts so far for any services from anyone related to this project.
Have we signed any contracts?
You know, I don't think that you have. I think that you've used Dan Rawlings before to be your criteria developer. I think Dan's willing to be your criteria developer again. You'll have to name your criteria, your committee as part of that. You know, I don't know that you've signed anything with Jim Elizondo, who's the financial advisor.
I'm not sure.
Have any funds been dispersed towards this project so far?
No funds.
No funds have been dispersed so far. Okay. And let's see, so one of the things that we requested was financial records from the school relating to building maintenance. We asked for those records back in February, 261 days ago. What's the reason that the school corporation is delaying the release of those records willingly?
I'm not delaying anything. We're working on that.
It's 261 days. You can't tell me that you can't obtain financial records from within your school, and this is not some lumbering bureaucracy. This is Tri-Township. You guys are telling me that you cannot come up with those financial documents in 261 days.
Because we are not a lumbering bureaucracy. We all have other jobs to do.
That's not an exception. That's not an excuse.
Believe it or not,
You guys have an obligation to fulfill requests from taxpayers.
To keep us busy educating students, keeping them safe.
I don't think that excuse is going to work.
Do you guys use Keystone?
I'm not trying to get out of trouble with you, Justin. I'm just telling you, we all have other jobs
So do you
and tasks to do.
So you guys will just
To
be
my knowledge, we are working on that.
working at what pace? Are we going to be waiting for years to find out how much you guys spent on maintenance? Are we going to be waiting for years to find out account balances? Are we going to be waiting years to get the claims dockets you guys had at the meetings just a couple of weeks ago? What is the reason for delaying financial records? Nobody denies financial records unless they have something to hide.
Big accusation.
Do you use Keystone? The accounting program?
I'm not familiar.
Absolutely not.
I'm not familiar with Keystone.
What is your accounting
We use a lot
software?
of associates, a lot of software. The counties use it, townships use it, cities use it. We do not use Keystone.
Does it generate reports?
Excuse me?
Does it generate a report, like a fund report or an appropriations report?
So this should be a simple matter of generating a report then.
That's what he asked for.
Guidance from Mr. Shepherd, who takes his guidance from our school attorney. He can't just generate that.
So see, it's very easy. She knows how to do fund and appropriations reports. That's all you would have to do is generate a report.
We're talking about maybe a few minutes of work, if that. This is simple. And there's really just no reason to delay this.
Hey, I don't know how long your job takes to do. I just know that those ladies work hard and they're busy. I'm busy.
I appreciate the difficulty of accounting for a school corporation, and I've made it exceptionally clear on multiple occasions that I am happy to work with anyone in order to make this process easier to get those records. But delaying them indefinitely is not responsible to the taxpayers.
Or using taxpayer dollars to pay the attorney to delay it for you.
Which coincidentally is another request that we made, which was for the invoices for your attorney, which we're still waiting on as well, which I suspect is going to show that you guys are spending a good amount of money trying to fight this for no reason.
I'm not trying to fight anything.
How come her Ms. Conrad or her firm's disbursements weren't included in the vendor list in your guys' annual financial report? It's kind of an unusual thing to just leave off. Surely you got paid more than $2,500 last year. You made less than $2,500 last year?
Yes.
Yes.
That's very cheap. How nice of you.
I haven't been paying Monica a whole lot of money until you two have forced us to.
Well,
The only reason that you're spending money is because you're trying to delay the requests. If you just wanted to give them to us, there's nothing that Monica has to do.
I was able to skate by on legal advice with 2 breakfasts paid for by Monica, thank you very much. And I think a total billing of about $150 in a year and a half.
That's nice, but the only reason that you need to use her is if you're trying to deny the requests.
And so now there's such a lack of trust, we refer to the attorney.
Kelly, I tried to sit down with you. Last Tuesday, you called me to put in the notice, and I said, hey, I'm still open to meeting with you.
I tried to sit down with you, Justin, February 25th. And you came in, you were mad that you missed the meeting for the presentation.
We did sit down. We talked for a while.
And you came into my office and I said, we should talk, and you were very dismissive about the whole thing. You said, oh.
Well, that was February. This was just last week.
And other school boards have tried this. And then the records request started inundating about things.
No, we've made 5 records requests in 9 months. 5.
Last week or the week before, whenever, and you stated at that point, all of a sudden, now you want to meet. You said, I think our relationship is damaged. I said, you think? And then now you want to have a meeting. Well, that's a little hard to do right now under these current conditions and circumstances.
So when you spoke up at Wanata and said you were available to meet with anyone who wants to meet, that was anyone but Justin or Lisa?
I made that offer. I made that offer to Justin. He rebuffed it early on.
No, I took it up. I took it up early on. I went to it.
Then he made it personal.
When did I make it personal?
You've made this whole thing personal.
How so?
Well, when you go back and you are requesting my employment records from previous employers, tell me.
How is that personal? That's part of my job, is to research background about you. Look, someone told me,
my previous 3 or 4 employers.
someone tipped me off to serious allegations of you assaulting a student, and so I looked into it. If you like, I'll put them online, but I haven't brought them up yet.
Did you find anything in that?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Unbelievable.
Would you like it posted?
I didn't make it personal. We didn't bring it up.
We'll have to pay our attorney more.
We can post it for everybody to see what was written up. There's a docket
It's a
number and
public
everything.
record, yeah.
What you two, here's, the truth is, I feel really bad for this town and for this school system. The most disappointing thing to me, having been here and taken charge of this wonderful small school system, is that we have to fight against you two every step of the way. And it's just so exhausting and frustrating. I mean, that's...
I'm sorry you feel that we're the only cause of your problems.
Not just me, but I feel much worse for people who have...
You have a personal agenda against Kelly Shepherd.
There's also every week something very positive about the school.
No. No.
Yes, there is.
No, of course not.
I can't hear you when everybody else is talking.
I said, would you like to ask who pulled up the Save LaCrosse school sign?
Maybe you should say who stole the Save LaCrosse signs.
Stole, you know who stole them, you guys?
We're not talking about
No,
that.
you're not. Do you know?
Personal
Does
agenda
anybody want
against
to know
Kelly
who
Shepherd.
stole those Save LaCrosse signs?
What does that have to do with their personal agenda? against
Because
Kelly
it's one of our school board members' kids. Did you know that?
Was it
And you
fair?
guys have said how awful LaCrosse has been. We haven't done anything
All
like
right,
that.
we're gonna...
Can you commit to having the next public hearing in person? The one on Thursday next week, will it be in person?
As of right now, it is.
And if it can't be held in person due to some sort of COVID restrictions, will you commit to postponing it so that it can be held in person?
No,
So that this isn't in a Zoom meeting
I
and...
will not commit to that.
Not everybody was able to get into tonight's Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I got 2 text messages while I was sitting
We
here.
have a week to work out the bugs then.
And you're confident in one hearing that you're going to have all the bugs worked out and it will work perfectly for something that's incredibly consequential.
I answered your question. Do you have any more?
Yes.
Last meeting,
So
we asked
the-
about the records, and your voice said to everybody, you'll have to ask our attorney. Because she wasn't there. She's here, and you guys still can't answer. So what's up with that?
Give it the public records request and move on.
We did.
No,
you
you didn't. You gave 1 out of the 5 requests. You gave 1 of them. You gave the Dr. Balch letter.
There's 5. 5.
No, it doesn't.
5. That's not that many.
Guys, it doesn't take that long to find the records. You know exactly where they are.
What other questions do you have?
The other question is, why did you guys just decide to meet with Ratio this week, a week before the next public hearing? I mean, this report was finished in June or July.
I tried to get them last week.
No, not last week, but why didn't you meet with them several months ago?
Again, just scheduling and...
Scheduling.
I actually answered that earlier in the meeting. basically.
You did?
Yeah, because again, we're talking, the facility is 25% of the issue. Ratio can't do anything to help us with that.
Okay.
When Jim Shealy came forward and asked about doing ratio, why didn't you just tell him, don't waste your guys' money? Because there's a lot of people who chipped in money for that. Why, if you had no interest in it, you had no use for even going over it.
You want us to honor your requests, or you don't? I can't win either way now. What other question do you have?
No, that wasn't finished. If he came to you and asked, would you listen to it? Would you use it? Why not just tell him it's only 25% of the equation, the other 75% is more important. Don't waste the $5,000 or $7,000 worth of money that people donated to get the 69-page assessment.
We didn't have that much of a conversation, not since the time, like I've already announced, Jim and I met over breakfast, and he knows well about what my entire basis for this recommendation is. Justin, any others?
Yeah, one last one. I think this one last one. Why is the enrollment shrinking at Wanata so much in the past 5 years? I mean, in the last 15 years, LaCrosse High School has kept an incredibly stable enrollment. It's averaged 107 kids over the last 15 years. This year it's 108 based off of the numbers I got most recently. Wanata, on the other hand, is seeing about 58 kids leave in the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. Why is there such a decline? And also, I would note that you had pointed out earlier that, interpretation of data and whatnot. I would note that there's 15 kids starting in kindergarten pretty much every single year that are living in Tri-Township that don't come to school here. So this notion that it's solely because of the high school when they're already transferring to a different district in kindergarten,
Exactly.
I think, why are they leaving so early?
Before Mr. Shepherd came, was when they went to open enrollment. I mean, people don't wait to make the decision when the kids graduate from the 8th grade, whether they're gonna come to LaCrosse or gonna go to South Central. They see.
The parents make this decision in kindergarten?
Yeah.
As a parent, I do, yes.
They're thinking about high school curriculum offerings in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And they pick to go to a school that's further away for so many years before they even get to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Early education has a huge impact on a child's development. Most of the children's learning and their basis of learning comes in the early years. You have no right to criticize or to judge or to assume where a parent puts his or her child. That is America, it's our choice.
I don't think he did.
What?
Any other questions?
I think that's all. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And please, does anybody else?
I just want to say something. I want to thank every single one of you guys up there for putting up with this and standing up for our children.
Thank you. Let's make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion by the board to close the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't think-